Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mormonish. I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Landon.
And we have a very interesting show this evening, don't we, Landon?
It is a doozy. This has been quite the ride, and it just gets more and more. I shouldn't say fun because it's so heartbreaking, but we're going to try to make it as fun as we can.
That's a good way to put it, I guess. It's interesting because we said at the beginning of the week, hey, we should do a temple update. We haven't done one for a while, and we were kind of thinking, I wonder what's happened. All of a sudden, boom, 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 this week, there have just been so many things that have happened with all 5 temples that we follow. So why don't we put up our first slide so we can show everybody what we are going to talk about. Here we go. We are going to talk about a tale of now 5 temples. Oh my goodness. And I guess we could do a little song. We could go temples, temples, temples. We could do kind of like a conga line. Is that...
That's about the way they're rolling them out right now. It's just a Congo line.
It is a Congo line. That's right. So we, of course, have been following 5 temples and talking to residents and working with them. And so this is our update for all of you. We're just going to go right through them. So buckle up, everybody. That's all I have to say. We have a multimedia presentation. And I think if you try to frame it all within a big picture, that's kind of what we're going for here, is to help people understand the big picture of this. If you kind of have that as in the back of your mind as you watch everything, I think there'll be some revelations along the way. Don't you think, Landon?
Yeah, I think it's important to note that we're going to talk about 5 different temples. This isn't about any specific temple. This isn't about any specific person. This isn't about any specific city. Although, when we see things that seem suspicious, we're going to point that out. But we're not trying to say anyone has done anything illegal. We're not trying to point the finger at anyone. But what we are trying to demonstrate is the playbook that the church continuously uses throughout all of these locations to get these temples built, and the strong arm tactics and the steamrolling that they're doing in these locations to get these temples built. And we just want to be able for residents to understand that this is coming when they announce a temple in your location, to start looking for this stuff, because it's important. If you want it to be built in accordance with your local zoning regulations, you better get started the second you hear about one.
Yep, that's exactly right. And the whole issue is about, and I won't even say following the laws of the land anymore. I'll say don't change the laws so that then you can comply.
Well, I would say don't manipulate the laws. And that's what we see here, because the church has a lot of political influence. And it's funny, when we talk about this stuff, we always hear that, oh, separation of church and state. The church should be able to do what it was. And yet the church is there, we'll see, manipulating the state and turning it to people and saying, you're persecuting us, when they're the ones that are manipulating the system. The poor residents are just going, I just don't want this gigantic thing in my backyard where it's not zoned properly. And the church says, well, we'll see about that. And then they manipulate. And the playbook we're going to discuss is how they're manipulating the system to get these in where they're trying to get them.
Exactly. But all the residents across the board would welcome a temple in their town, and they are completely accepting and appreciative of their LDS neighbors. They just want everybody to work together as a community so that these temples can go in a place where they're going to be accepted and not cause any kind of a problem. So the first temple that we're going to talk about is the Heber Valley, Utah temple. We've been covering this for over a year now. So as you'll see as we go along, these temples are all in different phases and stages of development. None of them have been built yet. None of them have even begun to be built yet. A lot of them are embroiled in litigation, and we're going to take you through all that. So let's go to our next slide. Landon, do you want to review that really quick?
Oh, yeah. So this is the Heber Valley Temple. We've covered it many times. 2 attached end towers, 87,000 square feet, 210 feet tall, in beautiful mountain valley of Heber Valley, Utah. It was announced on 3rd of October of 2021. And it came up recently in one of the last general conferences, if you remember.
It did. It absolutely did. And again, these are just updates we have on Mormonish Podcast YouTube channel, and also audio podcast. We have a temple playlist. So you can go back. We have about a dozen episodes following these temples step by step, going back a year. So we have plenty of information about Heber. Right now, we are just updating as far as what's happened recently. So yes, the LDS Church had their general conference in April of 2024, just last month. And one of the speakers mentioned the Heber, Utah temple. So this was Elder Neil L. Anderson. And he, in part of his address, and this is broadcast all over the world and also to the people in the audience there in Salt Lake, he said, the youth of this church are incredible. In a difficult world, they take upon themselves the name of Christ. In Heber City, Utah, a public meeting was held to discuss the details of a temple planned for construction. Again, this was a city council or a county council meeting. 300 youth filled the adjoining park to show their support for the proposed temple. One young man, speaking to government leaders in an open forum, courageously explained, I am hoping to be married in this temple. The temple will help me keep myself clean and pure. Another described the temple as a symbol of light and hope. Young men and women of the church throughout the world are embracing the name of Jesus Christ. So this is a very positive, nice message in which he says that these youth in Heber decided to attend the city council meeting to express their support for the temple. Right, Landon?
That's the way he made it sound like, and that they're, by doing so, they were embracing the name of Jesus Christ.
That's right. So let's go to our next slide. Let's see the rest of the story. So did they, though, is what the title here is. And I have a whole bunch of ice cream. So yes, the youth did come to the city building, 300 of them. It was a huge crowd, but they didn't just necessarily decide to come on their own. Would you like to read this letter that was distributed to LDS wards and stakes prior to this city meeting?
Yeah, dear youth and youth leaders of the Old Mill Stake, we have been made aware of a special gathering of youth in the Heber Valley to show support of the Heber Valley Temple. This gathering will happen on Wednesday, October 25th at 4:30. The location of this gathering will take place on the grassy area next to the Senior Citizen Center. Several food trucks will cater ice cream, pizza, soda, and snacks for the youth. This is an extraordinary opportunity for our youth and youth leaders to gather and show their support and excitement for the temple. We are inviting all of our youth and youth leaders to participate in this special event. We recognize this may present a conflict with current plans, but if feasible, will be a rare and memorable gathering for our youth in Heber Valley. So cancel everything. We got free food. But these youth are following Christ. It sounds like these youth are following what all youth do. They're following the food and the free food and the party that is being put on for them.
Yeah, and it was definitely, I believe, to get those moments on the news where you just have a mass of people there. Mm-hmm. They were singing, if I remember correctly. Again, this happened last October, but they just mentioned it last month as this very faith-affirming and wonderful moment. So there was singing and they were, talking to the reporters. And it definitely was a feel-good, newsworthy moment. And, the city council, the county council, of course, saw that, all this support. So, and as we go forward to a couple other temples, you'll see some other perhaps uses of this idea of getting a lot of people to show up in one place. So
and
again, that's awesome.
The reason we're showing this is again, it shows how the church manipulates the system. And you can say that, all these, any organization is going to do this. Most organizations don't have the means to provide free truck food to 300 different people. Right. And then you get up in conference and act like it was, the kids just showing up randomly on their own. You could have simply said, the church set up a gathering for the youth and provided food, and the youth showed up in great numbers to help support the temple. But you left all that part out and made it a faith affirming as if they did it straight out of their faith when you directed them to be there, basically, and directed that all youth councils, all the youth activities be counseled so that they could come and have a photo opportunity. That's what this was. It was a photo op to get the cameras out there to show overwhelming support for a temple, because everyone knows in Utah, the church can call upon tens of thousands of people to show up, and they will show up out of duty.
Yeah, and that may be one thing, if you're watching this and you're a never Mormon, and perhaps you don't know that there is a very organized mobilization structure where it is possible to get information, emails, or letters that are read to congregations out very quickly to hundreds, I would say even thousands of people. It is very mobilized. One press of the button and an email can go out to thousands. So it is very possible to mobilize in this way. And I think we'll see that as we go forward and talk about some of the other temples. So what else happened in Heber? Let's go to our next slide. That ice cream is actually making me hungry. We might have to stop for a second so I can have an ice cream break. Okay, so the litigation in Heber has been going on for quite a while. There was one lawsuit that had to do with the dark skies from Save Wasatch County Dark Skies, Wasatch Back. I butchered that name. That lawsuit has since been withdrawn. These lawsuits are funded by individual residents, not the city of Heber. These are individuals. There is still one lawsuit by residents in the Red Ledges development area, and that lawsuit is still on the books. It's still happening. And there was a question the LDS Church asked if they could join the city as a defendant, because the residents group is suing the city to say, hey, you're not protecting, our zoning, our laws, our land.
And when you say city, it's actually the county in this case.
It is the county, yeah. It's a little confusing. Yeah, thank you. It's a little confusing.
Some of these are cities, some of these are counties, yeah.
Exactly, because the temple's being built on county land. So I guess I should say public officials. That would make it sound more inclusive. Anyway, so this was before a judge. Can the LDS Church join with the county in defending themselves against a lawsuit that residents have brought? And what did we find out, Landon, just this week?
Yeah, so the judge ruled that that the church could join the temple lawsuit. This is not surprising. We fully expected that. It's pretty common to let the property owner be in on it. The big difference here, though, is now you've got Wasatch County now has the church paying for the lawsuit, as opposed to the county is going to fight it. Unlimited resources. Obviously, a city and a county are going to say, how much is this worth to spend of our budget to fight? But the city now, or the church now takes up the fight and takes up the bill, which makes it very tough for individual citizens to fight a multi-billion dollar, not multi-billion, multi-hundred billion.
Yes.
Dollar
Let's
corporation.
Be clear.
So a lot of people have looked at this as this is a win for the church. This was fully expected. In fact, we almost see it the other way, because at the same time, there was a second motion that was the church asked that the lawsuit be thrown out, and that it didn't have any merit. And the judge said, no, I'm gonna hear the arguments, and so they have till May 25th or something to provide responses. The church does, and then that they'll start hearing arguments at some point after that.
Yeah, I think it's the 21st. I think we just looked that up. But yeah, so there were two things there, and the one not unexpected, but the second one, they did not throw it out. So, that's a little bit of a step, because that means that the residents will be able to be heard. So that happened. We're also going to talk about what happens when residents speak in front of the city or county or any kind of public entity, a council, to kind of plead their case. And in order to set the stage for this here in Heber, I want to talk about the groundbreaking, which happened back in 2022. So on the picture on the left, you can see President Nelson, that's the prophet of the LDS Church, and his lovely wife, Wendy, is right beside him, and some other dignitaries from Heber Valley. And we want to draw your attention to the gentleman in the hat. He is there with a golden shovel at the groundbreaking of the temple. He is also a member of the Wasatch County Council. So that's very interesting. Another person that was at the groundbreaking ceremony, you can see him on the right hand, bowing his head, I guess is maybe a prayer is being said. This is the Wasatch County Planning Director. So these people at the groundbreaking, and also sitting on the councils that make the decisions, like these lawsuits that the residents are putting forward. So what we're going to share with you, this happened last fall when one of our residents stood up at the county council and, tried to explain about the dark skies. We kind of knew, she had kind of told us sort of what had happened, but I didn't come into possession of the recording until just a week ago. And I said, this is very telling. A lot of our residents in a lot of these states where they're dealing with the temple, they are going to talk to city councils, county councils. They are going to talk to their public officials. And so this is just an example here in Heber Valley, Utah, of what happened when our resident, who at that time, there was a lawsuit having to do with the dark skies, stood up in front of the city council. County council. I'm never going to be able to say it right. Every time I say city, just hear me saying county, okay? Anyways, about 3 minutes long. We'll just play this for you very quickly. Again, it's a resident trying to give information about dark skies to the county council.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was a great discussion at the end. We actually missed the interlocal. We didn't catch that it was on the agenda, but we have gone back and watched it and really appreciate the discation that took place.
And look what they're
with,
talking about
Heber
here.
and
The code
Midway,
amendment to ensure dark sky
well.
certification. That's what this meeting is.
Yep, I missed that. Yeah. So, and I know there's a meeting with, for MIDA tomorrow as well, so we're going to come there as well because supposedly they've adopted some type of dark sky ordinance as well. So we want to understand that better because we're really interested in the whole Wasatch back area. Let me say this. We talk to a lot of people all over the valley, and we interact with a lot of people all over the valley. And mostly what we've heard is it doesn't matter. They're not going to listen. They've never listened. They won't engage. And I don't believe that's true. And I can't believe that's true. We also get accused of being religious bigots and only caring about the temple. And I'm telling you, that's not true. And everywhere we go, we say the same thing. So I want to read something very quickly. Russell Nelson, president of the Church of Latter-day Saints, spoke in February about the need for members of the church to be peacemakers. He explained that now is the time to cease insisting that it is your way or no way. He challenged followers of the faith to examine their discipleship within the context of the way you treat others. I bless you to make your adjustments that may be needed so that your behavior is enabling, respectful, and representative of true followers of Jesus Christ.
It's not the Church of Latter-day Saints. It's the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Just to make sure that's clear.
It's clear.
Thank you.
I was reading how it was written.
Sorry.
My apologies.
So what's the point of that comment?
The point of that is,
Yes, I mean, are you saying we're not?
no, the point of that is we're trying to outreach to the community and share our concerns and our thoughts. We are not against the temple. We have never said we're against the temple. We get characterized as that, but that is not the case. I just wanted to make that statement because I hear it continuously, mostly on social media, but I've heard others get up and speak along the way that that's the case, and it's not true.
And you've had members of your group on a podcast called Mormonish, which is absolutely,
That was me.
which is absolutely against what we're doing and
And you
anti-religious.
would not have heard anything out of my mouth against the faith or a temple. And in fact, I stated pretty much the same thing on that.
Well, and I
But
have,
we have to have a means of communicating with people. It's very, very difficult to communicate in the valley and the state.
well, I haven't had a chance to go back and listen to it and write it down exactly the way it was said. But in that podcast, very close to the front, I don't remember whether, I believe it was the gentleman that was with you that made the statement, but the statement was made at the time the temple was announced, how many months before the location was determined. The statement was made by that gentleman was, oh, there goes our dark skies. Not having a clue where it was going to be
I don't
put.
believe
That was
that's
already
correct.
concerned. I'll go listen to it. It's there.
I'd appreciate it, and I'll be happy to talk with you further. It's
Yeah.
not an issue.
So I heard that
I'm
and I thought,
representing-
wait a minute, there was a question.
I think we're getting off.
Yeah, anyway.
Yeah. So let me
enough of that.
finish. Thank you so much. So we want to show you an example of what the current county will.
Okay. I'm sorry. I almost can't speak. I love this person who is trying to speak. She is the most ethical, amazing, brilliant person. And the key here is the person on the county council said, you're against what we're trying to do. Who's we, Landon? Who's we on the county council?
Yeah, the county's trying to override their dark sky initiative. And what got me is he says you went on a Mormonish podcast, which is absolutely against what we're trying to do here, which is to override the law for lighting. So what does that have to do with anything? Deseret News could cover this. It's owned by the church. The church news can cover this. It's owned by the church. At what point did this councilman forget who he's representing? He's representing all people of the county. He's representing everyone.
Yep.
He is not representing the church. This is not a high council meeting. This is a county commission meeting. And you can see they're correcting the names of the church in accordance with the direction of the prophet. Boy, they sure knew how to jump on that one real quick. And she's trying to explain, oh, all I'm trying to say is the prophet of the organization that's trying to change this said that we could talk about it and that we should listen to each other. And I'm simply bringing that, and you're shooting me down right from the start. You're shutting me down and you're saying I can't go anywhere and make a comment on anything that has a different view, any organization that has a different view than you. What county is this?
It's only 5 minutes in and we're going crazy. No, again, that's exactly what you're saying is this is a county council. They represent everyone who pays taxes. They represent the 50% that are not LDS. They represent the 50% who are LDS. Our resident there is simply showing a different point of view from perhaps the LDS point of view. But he keeps saying, what are you saying we're doing? You're anti what we're doing. That to me says he's very much representing one point of view. So anyway, the reason we bring this up is because we know a lot of our residents are headed into council meetings with public entities. And, we just want everybody to, you could see how respectful she was. And all of the residents we deal with are so respectful of the political process. And we just hope that any of these public entities will be able to hear both sides of things because there are two sides.
Well, and it certainly showed the bias of the council right from the beginning, which the council kept making every argument that they are not doing this for the church, that they would do this for Walmart or anybody else who wanted to break the dark sky. The fact that they hadn't done it for the last 20 years, but they decided to do it with this one entity. Oh, okay, you showed your stripes right there. You showed what side you were on. We have pictures of half of you at the groundbreaking ceremony. And you're accusing her of bias because she went on a podcast, which anyone can watch the podcast she did. It was professional. They gave the dark skies. They talked about how it was going to impact. And what was the anti-religious statement that I'm assuming it must have been me that he was talking about?
Or Lisa did have someone
or
with
John,
her.
Or the person that was with her. But either way, I don't even know what his point was. They said, oh, there go our dark skies. Well, that's exactly what happened. You just changed the dark sky regulations. No one can say there goes our dark skies when they build a temple. And then he said they didn't even know where the temple was going at the time. Of course we knew where the temple was going. We didn't know anything about this. The first I heard about it was when they did the groundbreaking. So of course they knew where the temple was when we did the podcast on this. So I have no idea what this gentleman means, but it's clear that anyone who speaks on anything that's not a church-run news outlet is bigoted, and exactly what the speaker was trying to say in this case was that we need to be respectful, and he shot right back and said, well, you can't speak on any non-church entity, but
no other point of view.
And any church-owned news publication, KSL, which, by the way, this group actually asked for KSL and Deseret News to come do a story on it, and they did not. So that's when they started reaching out to other groups.
Yeah, you know you're scraping the bottom of the barrel, but the only place where you can be heard is
right.
Mormonish Podcast. We're happy to be here for everyone at the bottom of the barrel. Call us. All right, let's go to our next slide. I think we got our point across here. So Landon kind of alluded to the fact that the ordinances for dark skies and buildings of certain heights and all those kinds of things had been in place for 20 years. It had been a really long time. And suddenly, without warning, the county overturned and changed everything. And our residents warned them. They said, this is going to open the door to a lot of different things that you may not be expecting. On the surface, it looks like maybe you did this just to allow the temple. Of course, they say that isn't true. So I'm calling this opening Pandora's box, because just this week, here is an article, isn't there, Landon? Let's look at the next slide.
They didn't just override the dark skies. The temple could not be built where it was supposed to go. It did not meet all the codes. They were going to have to go through a lot of special use requests, which was unlikely to happen. So they did an end run around all the rules and did what's called an LDA, a Legislative Development Agreement, which allows them to easily skirt all of the current zoning laws. This is something that is very rarely given. And of course, they say it had nothing to do with it being the church that we gave special consideration to.
They just felt like doing it.
Now it's coming back. A developer requests code exceptions to build golf lodge above Jordanelle Reservoir.
Yeah, this would not have been possible prior to this change that was made that the temple requested. So that's the key here.
Well, it would have been possible, but it would have been probably denied and very hard.
A lot of applications.
Yes. Sky Ridge is applying to build a golf lodge that doubles the permitted height. The developer is asking the Wasatch County Council, the very same guys who we just watched, to grant exceptions through the same process used for the Heber Valley Temple.
Pandora's box. Now the floodgates are open. Anybody can apply for anything by the same criteria that the temple got in.
A legislative development agreement is the same process the county used to approve plans for the Heber Valley Temple. The temple LDA has attracted significant public attention and controversy, including an ongoing lawsuit. Woodward nodded to the temple agreement in his presentation to the county council. He said, since the county agreed to an LDA for the temple, developers have been asking to use the process for more projects. Since we've kind of cracked open this door, we've had a lot of people knocking on it, wanting us to open it further, he said.
Yep, and I think we all saw that coming, didn't we? And as we go further in the slideshow, there are some cities that have seen that kind of thing coming, and they're taking steps. So this is not unexpected, is it, Landon?
No, and that's why the other communities need to be aware that when councils start changing the rules to allow for this organization to come in and do this, they're opening the doors for the entire development to change in their community. They lose control of it because they're making changes to control, to allow for them. And now how do you go back and say to someone else, well, we're okay with them doing it, but we're not okay with you doing it?
Yep, you can't. There's no way. So anyway, I think that concludes our update on Heber Valley. And again, the next thing that's going to happen in Heber Valley is just the judge taking into consideration, the church has joined the suit, and there'll be some more legal maneuvering, won't there?
Absolutely.
Okay, another temple that we are following is a temple. This is probably the earliest along in the process. This is the McKinney, Texas LDS temple. Let's read a few stats on those if you can, Landon.
Yeah, this is a 43,000 square foot temple. It's being in the town of McKinney, Texas. It was moved there from a town called Prosper, Texas. And
it's Fairview, actually. It's not even McKinney. It's Fairview.
It's being located in Fairview. So this one is, you can see a rendering of it there. So it's, kind of middle size. It's on 8 acres, 173 feet tall, though, which would make it the tallest building in McKinney. taller than their water tower. So it's run into a little bit of a problem. You might want to explain this.
I don't know. I was looking at that picture. It seems like I looked that up. That might not be the right temple picture. So don't come at me in the comments because that's what it was showing, but it might not be quite right. I might have it mixed up with another one. So anyway, so the first thing that the residents heard about this is they got a letter that said a 2-story building was going to be built and it would follow all the regulations of the town, I think is what it said. So they didn't think too much about it until they started seeing some of the renderings and the things that were being presented to the city council or the planning and zoning board, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's it. So after they received the letter, let's go to our next slide. This is when we started to get wind of these instructions that were going out to the members of the church there to make sure to, write in, email in, contact your public officials about the temple, and to make sure that you mention the steeple. And we'll talk about why in a second. This is a funny, in the LDS world, there's something called the family, a proclamation to the world. It shows the most important thing, in the church is the family. And here somebody has made this where they're saying the steeples, a proclamation to the world. One of the most important things now we're learning in the LDS faith is the steeple. And I made some AI of some kids looking up at all those steeples. I thought that was kind of cool.
Who'd have thought that steeples would play such an important part in our religion?
Who would think? Who would think? So the reason that we're talking about steeples, and a lot of you are probably aware of this, if you go to the next slide, is that there was a letter sent around helping people to understand how they could support the temple, how they could email, how they could write in, how they could talk to their public officials about their support for the temple. But there were some very specific instructions. Do you want to kind of read that and go over that, Landon?
Yeah, the instructions are on this picture here. They're over on the right-hand side. I'm not sure if you can see my pointer here, but they said in here to write a letter. And it says a key message needs to be on the importance of the temple and how it allows you to worship as you choose to practice your faith, and that the building itself is a symbol of your faith, including the steeple, if you feel to be specific in that regard. The height of the steeple is part of our religious observance. The steeple is the temple's most distinctive architectural feature and serves no other purpose than to send a religious message. Steeples point toward heaven and serve the purpose of lifting our eyes and thoughts toward heaven. The steeple expresses a message of faith and devotion to God. Please do not copy and paste these exact words and phrases in your messages. Please use your own as you prayerfully feel impressed to do so. So pray about it and then say what you want about the steeple.
That's
after
right.
We told you to say this about the steeple.
That's exactly right. So you might be saying, why would they be talking about that a steeple is a really important part of the LDS faith? And this goes where it kind of all started in Cody, Wyoming. There's a law that we're going to talk about later called RLUIPA, Religious Land Use and Incarcerated Persons Law, that cannot, basically in a nutshell, it cannot stop a city, anyone from building a building if what you need to worship it's such an important part of your religion, you cannot worship without it. So for example, if your religion needed a dome and it was all through your doctrine that you had to have a dome, they couldn't stop you from building a dome. Well, as far as I know, and I've been in the church for over 5 decades, I've never heard anything about the height of a steeple. In fact, there are temples that do just have domes. And this first kind of came out in Cody, where the church tried to use this. And the residents in Cody were like, no, there are lots of churches or temples with domes. And so I think the church kind of backpedaled a little because they really couldn't point to anything in their doctrine that talked about the importance of the steeple. But here it is creeping in, isn't it, Landon?
It is, and that's continuing revelation. They can now just make shit up,
Oh my God.
And say that it's a religious tenet of your faith that has never been. And anybody who is our age or anybody who's any age at this point you can ask any member of the church how important steeples are in their worship in the temple, and they'll all tell you, I've never heard of this until just in the last probably month or two, since this has become a big deal, so that they can get around the RLUIPA law. They're willing to tell you whatever they need to is their doctrine so that they can build their massive unit there on the side.
So I made the prediction that there will be more talks and devotionals and things where this comes up. I think they're going to start talking about it a lot, trying to somehow justify why the temple is the major part of the temple, or the part of the religion, and why it's needed. And I think we'll see some evidence of that in just a second. So the next thing that happened is they had a community open house where I believe it was at the church building, wasn't it, Landon?
I think so.
I think it was, yeah, where they answer questions. And this is pretty standard. After they announce and they send out the letter, then they have a meeting where they have church officials, church lawyers, people from the city come in and speak at this meeting. So it says everybody is invited to come and see and talk about the new design and all of that. This is the McKinney Temple right here. I have no idea why on my slide, probably because we have like 70 slides. One or two are bound to get messed up. So I really apologize. This right here is the McKinney Temple. It has the single spire. So I don't know what that initial slide was, but this is it, the McKinney Temple. So we were able to get a few little tidbits from this meeting that happened last week on May 2nd. And I think we're going to play those. Yes. So here is, and who is speaking? Do you know, Landon?
The LDS lawyer
Yes.
was addressing the concerns of the McKinney residents. And it should be important. It's important to know we've podcast about this before. I think this is our second or third time. We've talked about the steeples. We've talked about, the changes that they're trying to make here. But here comes the lawyers, and they've already been pretty dishonest to the people. They told them it's only a 2-story building, even though it's 70 feet tall and 120, 143, whatever the height was on it, with the steeple. So they've told them several things that just are not true. Or they leave out stuff that's important information for people to know. And so, they have the LDS lawyer come in to address the need for a tall steeple, because obviously all doctrine comes from lawyers, as we know in the LDS church. So let's go ahead. It's kind of hard to hear.
Let me just say up front, the audio is very soft. It's being recorded. You can also hear the people kind of talking over the audio. In fact, at one point, I think I hear one of them saying, he's lying. But if you want to read along, it's pretty accurate as far as the subtitles right there. So again, this is from the McKinney meeting for the residents to find out what's going on. This is the lawyer. And he's in this first clip going to be talking about the importance of the steeple to the temple.
For the steeple is it's intended to draw your eyes to and encourage people to look up as they face challenges in life and put their trust in God. It's meant to be a symbol of hope for members knowing hope. It incorporates the areas such as the celestial room that Jay spoke about, and it's designed to be the most religious room in the temple because it's meant to symbolize heaven. It's on the second floor to symbolize that God is on a higher level than we are in life. And its arched ceilings, its high arched ceilings, are to represent the beauty and the significance to remind you when you go in the celestial room that this is going to be an experience similar to heaven, and it is a grand place. Fundamentally, the ability to express your religious beliefs and this church's religious beliefs are embodied in the First Amendment.
Wow, that kind of covered all of it right there, didn't it? Yeah. It said you need to make sure everybody knows that your First Amendment right to worship in a temple with a steeple, which is important because it shows that God's on a higher level than you. These are really interesting concepts I've never heard in all my years in the church.
No, this is quite unique. I hadn't heard that the celestial room is on the second floor to remind us that God is higher than us. I guess there's a problem with that, though, because a lot of the smaller temples are only a single story, as are Boise and they may have rebuilt Boise, but it used to be. There's a lot of temples that are only 1 story tall. So I guess God's equal with us in Boise, but he's higher than us in Texas. Salt Lake, it makes a real big problem because the 5th floor, if you remember, is that solemn assembly room where all the general authorities get together. So evidently the general authorities, the prophets, and the quorum of the 12 are actually higher than God in the hierarchy if we do it by which floor they occupy in the temple.
3 floors higher than God in the Salt Lake temple. So yeah, again, we've never heard anything like this in the church before. It seemed like a lot of unusual metaphors that he was trying to make to talk about it. So, and I'm sure we'll hear more of this. I think we predicted that, but he was definitely telling the residents this, and the residents, they've been reading those letters about the steeple. So I think that's why you could hear the whispering on there where they're saying, that's not right. They sent a letter, people are kind of aware. It's pretty transparent there what's happening. They need the steeple to be the most important part so that they can use RLUIPA so that they're not denied the ability to build.
So that they're the tallest and most known and best seen thing in the whole town. And it's interesting. I think he kind of gave us a solution to the problem right there, because he said that the celestial room represented heaven. And yet he said that the steeple points toward heaven. So why don't we just take the steeple and turn it upside down and point it down into the celestial room? Problem solved. Now the steeple points to heaven, and you've got your heaven, and you've reduced the height of the temple by quite some, 40,
and that would look
50
really
feet.
cool. I think
Yeah,
that would be a
would.
really interesting architectural element. Absolutely. I feel what they're going to start doing is kind of redesigning and actually putting the celestial room within the steeple. I feel they're going to start doing that, which is problematic because how many stairs is it going to take all the elderly people to get up there and the elevators? But that's the workaround. If the celestial room, which is the culmination of the experience in the temple, we're up there in the spire, right up there at the tippy top, then I guess they could make that argument, huh?
They're going to try it. And you did notice he went at the end. Where did he go?
Yeah, First Amendment.
First Amendment. This is you're an American. It's your responsibility to accept this temple. Well, he forgets that they also are landowners and they also have rights. And those rights are that they bought in a area that was zoned and had a master plan that did not include 173-foot temples.
Yep. And they're from Texas. Enough said. I love Texas. My sister lived there for a while. Okay, let's go to the next little sound bite from the meeting. And this is going to tell us a little bit more about what will happen if the residents and the city don't approve this. What will happen to their town?
Just a second. I got to get to the right one here.
We have so many clips. I told you this is a multimedia presentation. So this one says a town could face a lawsuit from the LDS church. And here we go with the audio of the LDS lawyer addressing them again. Again, sound is kind of bad and there's a lot of whispering, although you will hear a moment where there's an audible, when some of the things are said. So just kind of read along and listen for that.
The Department of Justice sent out a memo to all the cities, counties, and states in this nation to say, you need to recognize the federal statute. The Department of Justice is currently active investigating lawsuits and investigations and bringing lawsuits to enforce the laws. So this town, if it's found to violate, will need to comply or face enforcement rules from the Department of Justice. Under the United States Constitution and the federal state statute, the city can't substantially burden the free exercise of religion.
Yeah, do you want to explain what that was about, Landon? Oh.
Case law has recognized that symbolic speech, including architectural elements, are constitutionally protected.
There you go. Symbolic elements, symbolic speech, which also are architectural elements, are protected. So what were they trying to say there?
This one really got me upset because, again, they're fibbing. They're saying the Department of Justice is going to come after your town and the Department of Justice is going to sue you. The Department of Justice is not going to sue these cities. The Department of Justice did not sue in Heber Valley. Of course, they voted for it with full town compliance, but they didn't sue in Cody. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints sued the city of Cody. And that is who they sued twice and then the cities came back.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure I don't say the church's name wrong because I don't want to be corrected here. But the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is the one who is going to sue the city of McKinney if they don't allow them to build this temple here. Man up and say that that's what you're going to do, that it's you that's going to sue them. Don't fuck this off and say the Department of Justice is going to send Walker, Texas Ranger in here to bust you guys because you're not obeying the zoning codes. The church is the one who's going to sue these people. Man up and say it, lawyer. Don't sit there and tell these people that it's the Department of Justice that's going to be doing this to them.
Yep, that's exactly right. So, and you can hear the reaction. The people were like, what? There was some laughter. There was some, because I'm sure they're not used to an entity coming in and saying, if you don't let this happen, you will be sued. I think that was something that they typically don't hear when there's
and isn't that we just explained all of the great architectural symbolism that we have in the temple to point to God and to the love of God. And if you don't allow it, we're going to sue your ass.
Wow, Landon, you should have been a lawyer.
What kind of meetings are these?
I don't know. Of course, I do know because I've been following these cities for a long time. So yeah, and thank you for correcting me on Cody as far as the lawsuits. I was thinking there were 4, but there were 2 and then a turnaround. So I want to make sure I get that correct. So yeah, we don't want to exaggerate because there's no need to exaggerate. So, all right. So that was the meeting. And then let's go to our next slide.
Okay,
Yeah, I know it's a little hard to get from slide to slide.
Get it moving. Doesn't like to change slides on.
No, it does. Well, we can listen to it again if we have to. So and there was a lot more to the meeting, of course. I'm sure it's recorded somewhere. I'm not sure. Anyway, so then we came across this letter. There was a person that was interviewed by the Salt Lake Tribune. I've yet to really see an article come out in the Salt Lake Tribune. That's a Utah newspaper. But I have heard that some people are being interviewed. So this person, as I understand it, is a faithful member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And she was interviewed. She's not completely in favor of the temple as it is now, location and everything. So she wrote this letter to her peers, other faithful members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I think this is worth reading. It definitely gives you something to think about.
Yeah, this is absolutely worth reading. And I want to compliment the person who wrote this. This is a faithful Latter-day Saint person who called it the way they saw it. They knew that they were going to get heat from the ward members and other people. And so they were proactive and they went out and they wrote, here's the problem I have with this whole process. And I'm going to move us and make us a little smaller so I can read this. But the letter goes, a few days ago, I was interviewed by the Salt Lake Tribune. I want to share this with my fellow LDS members and my community. Number 1, how far, roughly, that is a few miles, less than a mile, a town away, etc., do you live from the proposed site of the Fairview Temple? This was one of the questions that the reporter asked. I live less than a mile from the Fairview Temple site. I pass that land several times daily. Second question, how long have you lived in the area? I have lived here for over 20 years and raised my children here as well. There is an extraordinarily strong LDS community in Fairview. Fairview is a very conservative area with high net worth individuals. The town of Fairview's slogan is ironically, keeping it country. All the home lots in Fairview are more or less required to be 1 acre or more. So there are no apartments or low-cost houses in the residential district. In fact, there are no tall churches or non-religious businesses in the entire Fairview residential district. Question 3, as a Latter-day Saint and a local to the area, would you say you are opposed or supportive of the temple as currently proposed? Why or why not? I am 100% supportive of the temple being built, and I believe the town must approve it. Plus, we have a legal right to build it because other religions also built churches on the same type of land next door. However, I am really struggling with the moral dilemma of how to express my concerns to our leadership without going against leadership publicly or privately. The First Presidency wants this temple in Fairview. The non-LDS community clearly wants it to be the same height as other churches and other existing temples in other cities. The town wants and should follow their ordinance. And I want to be honest and not misleading about all of it when asked by friends and family. I have personally seen behavior from my own stake and general leadership that confuses me. This process has a series of sins of commission and omission that I humbly believe are contrary to our beliefs. If asked all the questions in a Temple Recommend interview, I would not be able to receive a Temple Recommend in good faith, knowing I have been asked to be deceptive to get this temple approved. Let me show you. Here are a few Temple Recommend interview questions that put me in a dilemma. Question number 4 from the Temple Recommend interview. Do you sustain the president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints as the prophet, seer, and revelator, and as the only person on the earth authorized to exercise all priesthood keys? Since I have privately and now publicly called out the first presidency by showcasing the deceptive tactics of our stake and general leadership, that our stake and general leadership used to try to get this temple approved, I would not be able to answer yes honestly. If I say no, I would not be able to receive a temple recommend. I hope and pray President Nelson isn't even aware of what has transpired in Fairview. Here are a few of the sins of commission and omission I have witnessed so far. Number 1, in the initial letter to the neighbors within 500 feet, no image was included, omission, and no mention was made of the height, omission, even though it is 3 times higher than any building in Fairview's residential district. This type of obvious omission erodes trust, and to be fair, it is what sparked the non-LDS community to doubt the church's motives. Number 2, in the follow-up letter to the local community after their outrage about the initial letter, the church foolishly sent out another letter with the phrase 2-story temple of sin of commission. This is a true statement, but once again, it is incredibly misleading, and the local community feels as if the church is trying to trick them. Number 3, in the zoning permit to the town of Fairview, it appears as if our leadership submitted their variance request using false and untrue precedents about the steeple height. Commission. All the locals are wolving this bogus precedent around as proof that we cannot be trusted. This type of action, whether intentional or accidental, is not helping us be good neighbors. 4, in the requested support letters provided by the church leadership to my stake and surrounding stakes, including in surrounding states, it appears our leadership was coaching people to be deceitful. Commission. The most troubling part of all of this is that this form letter seemed to suggest we all tell the town that the extra tall steeple height has long been a core part of our religious observance. It actually seems like we are being asked to be deceitful. Commission. Most of the temples I have visited are smaller than the Fairview Temple. I have never been taught that the actual steeple height mattered. In fact, a few temples don't even have steeples. What am I missing here? Where is this taught? This one item is the thing that troubles me the most. And trust me, we hear all about it from hundreds of locals. Somehow they got this letter. Temple recommend question number 6. The Lord has said that all things are to be done in cleanliness before him. Do you strive for moral cleanliness in your thoughts and behavior? Answer, yes, I do. Through prayer and fasting, it is clear that we should never commit sins of commission or omission to accomplish any goal, no matter how worthy. If our Heavenly Father wants this temple to be this height, then no man can stop it. We don't need to trick the locals. We should present ourselves as transparent and honest regardless of the outcome. Temple recommend question number 15. Do you consider yourself worthy to enter the Lord's house and participate in temple ordinances? Yes and no. Yes, because I will not be deceitful just to get this temple approved. No, because I am calling out President Nelson and our general leadership while hiding my identity out of fear of reprisal. I am not alone in my thinking. That is why we are confused. We want the temple, but we want to strive for honesty more than anything else. Point number 4, how has the proposed temple, or question number 4, how has the proposed temple impacted your local community? What about relationships in the ward? It is my strong belief that if this temple is built as high as proposed in this residential area, that it will push unsaved people away from our faith rather than drawing them in. This is Texas. People are fiercely independent and they despise any form of hypocrisy or misdirection. Question 5, do you approve or disapprove of the way Salt Lake has encouraged locals to support the temple and specifically the steeple's height? Why? I have personally seen behavior that concerns me in my own stake from our church leaders. Everyone here wants the temple. They just want it no higher than other religious buildings. Sincerely, Sister Anonymously Concerned.
Yeah, this was just great. I mean, this just covered all the angles, and this letter, parts of it could have been written in Cody, in Heber, and we've seen this going on for a long time. There are active LDS who do understand the harm this is causing in the communities, and they are afraid to speak out. They can't speak out. There are repercussions, and it just divides communities as the time goes on. And I'm fearful that's going to happen here in McKinney, Fairview area. So this person is extremely brave to write this, and she really hit it on the head as far as what the residents are perceiving as far as the church's actions. They're very confused. I don't think they've ever come across anything like this before.
Yeah, absolutely. I clap for the bravery and the honesty of this person. This is the integrity that, the church had that talk in conference on integrity and they said integrity is obeying your leader no matter what. This person probably has a problem with that talk as well, because integrity is standing up for what is right. And that's exactly what we're trying to do here. Is we're not saying there shouldn't be a temple in these cities. We're saying there shouldn't be a temple in the residential areas that they're not zoned for, that upset the neighbors, that cause the church to look like a bully and a steamroller and a pit bull, and causes harm to the community and division in the community. This person nailed it. Follow the procedures, and if it gets passed, you build it. If it doesn't get passed, you don't build it. It's that simple. It was supposed to be built and prosper. It got moved. Why did it get moved? Evidently, God didn't want it there, because the city evidently condemned the land and put a freeway through it, or a road through it. And so they got it taken away from what's the law where they can take your land away?
Eminent domain.
Eminent domain. They took it away on eminent domain. So
well, you know how that is, Landon. You have a freeway right next to
I
your
have a
house.
freeway in my
I'm surprised they
backyard.
didn't condemn your house.
And I didn't get to play all these games that the church
No.
gets to play to protect my property.
No.
And neither can the residents. But somehow the church has all of these rules that they get to skirt around, that they get to change, that they get to manipulate. And they feel that it's perfectly okay to not tell the truth, and to not be open, and to not be transparent. You may get away with that with your members. You got away with it with us for decades. But the people in Texas are seeing through it, and you need to be honest with them.
Yeah, and I never thought of that one point where she said, if the Lord, in their belief system, if the Lord wants it to be built, he will make a way for it to be built. And that doesn't mean the Lord's servants, the leaders and the people in the church, using some of these tactics to do it. It just means that he'll prepare a way. They really, it sounds like they might not have the faith to have the temple built. They should just put it in front of the council, let it happen where it's supposed to happen, and it's meant to be.
They don't have faith in the process. That's exactly true.
Yeah,
They
I'd
don't
never
have
thought of
faith
that.
that God can control the process. So they take control of it.
Yeah, I'd never thought of it. So anyway, thank you, whoever wrote this letter. This is a beautiful letter, and it really encapsulates everything just perfectly. So, all right, let's forge ahead. We have a lot to cover here. So one of the most recent things that happened in McKinney is there was a letter that was sent out asking the members to fast for the temple. Now, once a month in the Mormon faith is a Sunday that's called Fast Sunday, meaning that you skip, well, it depends. When I was growing up, I had to skip 24 hours of eating. Other families, it's 2 meals. And then in theory, you take the money that you would have spent, to eat, and you give it to the church to give it to a charitable purpose. It's also a time when if there's a special concern that you have, someone in your family is sick or something, you pray as you're fasting with a special purpose for something that you want to accomplish, or, for that person to get better. So they sent out a letter, the Allen, Texas stake. It says, brothers and sisters, as you prepare for Fast Sunday tomorrow, and I think this was last Sunday that it happened. Is that right, Lyndon? Yeah. As you prepare for Fast Sunday tomorrow, we once again invite you to include the McKinney, Texas Temple and the Fairview town leaders and the residents in your fast. So I bet you guys didn't all know that you were being fasted for last Sunday. We are enthused to have another house of the Lord here where we live. We request your faith and prayers that the work of the Lord will continue to move forward, and that all the residents may come to understand and recognize the great blessing a temple will be to our community. May the Lord bless each of you as we approach his sacred day. And then it gave the names of the state presidents. So this is something we hear over and over, and that is that the temple will be a blessing to the community once it's built. People may not see it now, but they will.
Yeah, that's over and over again. And it's funny that, you got to pray for the residents that they can understand the blessing the temple's going to be in their community. And that would be a miracle, I think, to convince the residents that this is going to be a benefit when they look out their window and see this in their backyard.
Yeah. And remember how we started kind of going through the family saying, if the dad suddenly in this picture could not pay his tithing, 10% of his income, he would not be able to go into the temple and receive the blessings of the temple. So even the member, there could be things that happen in their lives that stop them from going to the temple. If the mom in this picture suddenly decided she wanted to start drinking coffee, she would not be allowed to go into the temple and have that blessing. I think we talked about if one of the kids became part of the LGBTQ community and was going to get married to their partner, they could not enter the temple. They couldn't be married in the temple. Again, they could not participate in the blessings. So there's a lot of conditions.
If a sister or brother, older brother and sister went and got married in the temple, the younger siblings could not attend the temple.
Yeah, you have to be a certain age to go into the temple. So it is an interesting concept to throw around lightly. You'll understand the blessings because a lot of people don't see it that way. A lot of people who have stepped away from the faith are not allowed to go see family members participate in special things inside the temple. So there are very mixed feelings about it, inside and outside of the faith, I think.
Yeah, and if these are your best friends and they're getting married in the temple and they live next door to you in McKinney or in Fairview, Texas,
Mhm.
you can't go watch them you get to stand outside and wait in the Texas heat until they come out so that you can welcome them. And how is that a blessing to you? So.
Well, you might be able to go in the lobby. I did call a temple the other day because I have an event coming up to see, and they did tell me I could wait in the lobby. So that might be new. However, then I read something online that said someone had been asked to leave the lobby. So I don't know. But again, even the grounds, the residents probably will not be able to, they might be able to walk around, but not linger there. There are going to be gates, and definitely there's going to be security. So I don't know, that whole idea of being a blessing to the community. I absolutely know that the members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints believe that. But when you really drill down on it, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm guessing they're not paying any property taxes to the city. So
Yeah, that's not a
it's not a
blessing.
blessing in that way.
No
And
property
people will
taxes
say,
whatsoever.
the surrounding houses' property taxes will go up, or will property values will go up. Yes,
Yes.
and their property taxes
And
will
the
also go up.
taxes.
So
That's right.
it's only a blessing if you decide that you want to sell and move away from the place that you live. For people who
Right.
this is their home and this is where they want to stay, that is not a blessing to get to pay additional property tax so that the church doesn't have to.
Yeah,
But-
and we've seen that people are, kind of edged out because they can't afford that property tax. And like something else coming in, say a business that would provide jobs to the community, maybe high paying jobs. If it's a big facility, the temple's not going to do that either. That is not going to be a blessing or a benefit. You will not have additional jobs. You will not have additional property taxes.
And they always build these in the neighborhoods, as we just read, that are already, fairly affluent,
Mhm.
where the people are already blessed. They don't seem to need to be blessed. Why don't they build them in the neighborhoods that need to be blessed?
It's all very confusing, isn't it, as we look at the big pictures. So we are breaking back in to our own podcast, aren't we, Landon?
We are.
I feel like some kind of, I don't know, Woodward and Bernstein or something. It's absolutely amazing. We have had some late breaking news. And by late, I mean late. I don't even want to tell you what time it is right now.
That's
You
right.
can probably tell by the way that we look. But we've had some really exciting news and update on McKinney. There was a planning and zoning board meeting tonight to discuss the proposed McKinney Temple. This was in Fairview, the Fairview Planning and Zoning Board. And I think we should just roll the tape because we just got word of this just a few minutes ago. This is exciting.
Town in Collin County has been debating the size of this proposed temple for weeks. And tonight, hundreds of residents who say it's too big showed up to weigh in. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints announced the location for the large temple in Fairview, which is just minutes from McKinney. Sydney Persing was at tonight's meeting. She joins us now live with the Planning and Zoning Commission's decision. What happened, Sydney?
Well, Izzy, after almost 3 hours here of this very long meeting, the commission voted to deny the church's application for a permit. That, though, is just a recommendation. It is not a final decision. And I'll get to what happens next here in a moment. But first, I just want to catch our viewers up on the background, the details really at the heart of this debate here in town. So as you mentioned, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints wants to build a new temple here in Fairview. Thing is, it is really big. The 44,000 square foot building would include a spire that reaches 173 feet tall. That's 16 stories tall, and notably taller than city code allows. That's caused a controversy here in town. And tonight, the Planning and Zoning Commission heard from several church reps and supporters who argued the spire height is constitutionally protected from those zoning limits because it serves a religious purpose.
The building is constructed to reflect each of the members' faith.
The spire means hope in Jesus Christ. It means we can overcome adversity in our lives. It points to heaven.
But a slew of residents here, as you might imagine, disagree. They said the church is welcome here in town, but just not at that height. They called it unneighborly, obtrusive, disrespectful, and they told the commission they moved here for the small town residential country feel.
Why is the largest temple in Texas being shoehorned into a residential area in Fairview, Texas?
We warmly welcome the LDS temple to our great town of Fairview, but only if they follow the current zoning regulations.
And so again, the commission denied that permit here tonight after discussing how basically there are other churches, other temples in the area that have exceeded city code height restrictions, just not to quite that extent. But as I mentioned, this is a recommendation. It is not the final step in this fight, if you will. Next, City Council will take up this issue. Chris?
Wow, that is just amazing that all of a sudden popped in. And again, I don't think in all the temples that we followed, we have seen a planning and zoning board that even recommended, no, don't continue. And of course, this is just the first step. Then they have to go to city council, but we've never seen this, have we, Landon?
No, we haven't. I think in Cody, they, debated it and they argued whether it had passed or not.
Right.
First, they said it had not, but they were arguing whether they had a majority or not to make it legal. So, but this is the first case where they clearly blocked it and said, we're recommending to the city council that you not approve it. They're not saying they can't build the temple. They're saying it's got to be within code if you're going to put it here.
Yeah, that's exactly right. A couple other takeaways, just having watched this twice now since it came in. It's so exciting. I can't believe we're literally podcasting about McKinney and the new update comes in just in time. I'm really excited about that. But I thought the gentleman who was, sort of bearing his testimony about the temple and the spire in particular, I feel like it was almost word for word out of that letter. Remember, the spire points to God. I mean, they were using the verbiage that they had been instructed to use. Did you notice that?
I did. It looked like he was actually reading off of something, and he was quoting directly what the letter had said the purpose was. So again, we see right here that they're arguing that their constitutional right is to have that tall steeple.
Yep.
And you can see here the people of McKinney. You could tell how kind the people were. They're going, you're welcome here. In fact, the temple's going right next to the LDS Stake Center. So they're saying, you're here, you're welcome here. Your other church is within the code. Why can't this one be within the code? And so they certainly can worship without that steeple. And everybody knows that they're not fooling anybody. And they didn't fool the McKinney Council. It just makes me proud to be a native Texan right now.
Oh, you are a native. I knew there was a reason they were so spicy there because you're so spicy, Landon. So, but no, I think we saw an example right there of what we said before when we said, I really feel for the LDS members who are having to now say these words when, and the man was very emotional. I'm sure that he had convinced himself to believe it or whatever, but they're saying things that they've been told to say off a piece of paper. And that's
it's hard to
not
look
heartfelt.
sincere when you're reading, when you're reading what everybody, that was the letter that everyone in the community has seen and knows what they just keep saying the same thing. And some of the feedback we were getting from the meeting was that the town, that the commissioners had to tell the people, look, you can't just stand up and bear your testimony. You have to say something about why you're for or against it and give us a reason. Just telling us that you love the temple is not reason to break code. And it sounded like, some of the people that we had reporting said that that's what was happening. And the LDS people pretty much ignored it and just kept getting up and telling how important the temple was to them.
Yeah, that was exactly right. And I contrast that. Well, and also another person that was reporting from the ground told us there were a lot of tears, a lot of tears. But I contrast that to Heber, if you remember one of the early city council meetings where our residents were confused because they had gone in there armed with information. They had studied, they knew the zoning, they knew the codes, they knew what was going on, they knew what was being proposed, they understood everything about it. They had learned about RLUIPA. I mean, they had really, really dug in. And they said when we got there, it was full of LDS people, but all they were doing is standing up and saying, my roots, I'm generational here. I love the temple. It was very much on feelings and testimony, which that's part of it. You can express how you feel about a building being built or not built. But as the McKinney, Texas, the Fairview Council reminded everybody, you got to back this up. Tell us why, what code, what reason, what legality. You've got to understand the issues. And in Heber, that was fine. In Fairview, that's not fine. And I will tell you the one thing I learned from this video that I'm now going to use everywhere is the word disrespectful. The residents were very kind, but they said this temple at this size, at this height is disrespectful to a neighborhood. Didn't you think that word was a perfect choice of words?
I did. When I heard it, I thought the same thing. I was going, yeah, that's exactly right. You're coming into our neighborhood that we've established in a small town that we all live in and chose as our home, and you're putting this monstrosity in there and insisting that it must go in, and that is disrespectful. If a mosque got put, right next to the Salt Lake Temple, they'd be outraged and say this is disrespectful if somebody came in and did that. And it's the same thing. And you're disrespecting their laws. That's what they're saying. These are our zoning laws. If you want to come here and abide by them, you're welcome. If you don't, go somewhere else. Now, again, this is not binding. This is the planning commission recommends to the city council, then the city council votes. Then they've already told them, we're going to sue you if you don't vote for it. So that's the next thing that's going to happen, I think, is the church will file a lawsuit.
Yeah, I don't think we need a seer stone or a hat to go, I see a team of lawyers, I see a series of lawsuits, because that is what is going to happen next. And it can be very intimidating. And I hope that Fairview holds its ground. And I will say that I, in talking to the residents, taught them a phrase. I said, there's a phrase that Mormons use. It's part of an article of faith. It's obey the law of the land. I was just trying to explain the idea that Mormons do adhere to this. They do respect the law of the land. They want to respect the law of the land. And there's some kind of disconnect here with temples. So you might have seen those green shirts people were wearing on the video. Can you go to our next slide on this? I had one of our residents send us a close-up of that green shirt that they were all wearing at the meeting. And here it is. You can see what I'm talking about. This is the shirt they designed, Fairview United, keeping it country. And then it says, follow the law of the land, not an inch taller. So I think that's great. They get it. And they're welcoming the LDS population. They are welcoming the temple. They are just saying, please respect us. Please don't disrespect us and follow our laws, that we have developed over time in this community. It's been a process. Many people have been involved in developing the city code, over the decades so that they can have a community that they created themselves. Please respect that.
Which is funny from LDS people, because obedience, obedience, obedience is what you're taught over and over again. So obey but when they get told obey the rules, they say, no, they don't apply to us. God makes the rules and he overrides your rules. So
that's it. So, wow. Well, I don't think we've ever had a breaking story within one of our podcasts. So this is a first and it's exciting. So, all right, let's move on. I think we're finished with McKinney. We'll say goodbye. Hopefully this is the right slide for Cody. I don't know what happened to me. I have so many temples. Instead of counting sheep at night, I count temples. They're just jumping over my head. And so sometimes I get them mixed up. Cody, Wyoming LDS temple. This is the very first temple that we started to follow because a Mormonish viewer said, hey, there's something going on here. And we reached out to the residents, and we've gone to Cody to meet the residents. And we've seen the temple site. We've been very actively involved in following Cody. Do you want to go over really quickly what the features are here in Cody?
Yeah, it's a smaller temple. It's only 10,000 square feet. It's on 5 acres, but it's on 5 acres in a very western town, Cody, and it's got a 110-foot steeple on it, which is what has the people concerned.
Yeah.
And this fight went on over and over and over. The fight went on in Cody over whether because the steeple height was too tall.
Mm-hmm.
And that caused quite a bit of stir and contention. And so there's been quite a bit that has happened. The city council supposedly passed, but there was an argument between the city council as to whether it really passed or not. But the city planner, who was LDS, said, nope, it's passed, and we got it through, and they can start building. So there's been a lawsuit. It's on hold right now. But there's been some changes just this morning.
Just this morning. And that's what I mean when I thought, oh, we'll do a little bit of update. We're like, oh my gosh, I can't make these slides fast enough. And again, like Landon alluded to, this is the place where they were trying to say, okay, the steeple is not part of the height of the building. We can say this building is 35 feet tall. The steeple doesn't count. And, the residents push back. And then RLUIPA, no, we must have this steeple, back and forth. An LDS city planner sort of guiding things from behind the scenes. We've done a lot of podcasts on Cody, if you guys want to go back and watch those. So the modules, this is what you call a tip up temple, where the parts of it are already, they've been built, they've been fabricated, and they've been sitting on a member's land, his commercial land, for a while now, waiting to be moved up to the site. And we just got word this morning that those units have now been moved off that member's land because he's going to be doing some building or improvement there and can't house them there anymore. They are now moved to another parcel of land that he owns that is right next to the temple lot that he also donated.
Well,
so,
they're moved to his residence.
Yes.
The property is his residence that sits right next to where the temple is going to be built. So,
that's doing your duty. If you're
going to donate land,
pieces,
be ready for all the temple pieces to show up on your property.
That's exactly right. So this is the location. Landon and I visited this. We stood right there, and our residents there sent us some pictures of the move and what was happening, because they live right across the street, which is why they're very actively involved in this. So if we can go to our next slide.
And notice that crane there, that thing's probably up around 110 feet tall. So that gives you an idea. You can see that mountain in the background is going to completely disappear.
Yeah, this is on a hill. This will be viewed
modules
from below by everywhere. And Cody did put a crane up to the height of the temple steeple with a light on it to kind of show people what this will look like. But these are some pictures. The first thing that you'll notice on the right is this very tiny 2-lane road. Like I said, Landon and I stood right there on the side of the road for like an hour. We maybe saw 2 or 3 cars. I just can't even imagine the traffic to get to the temple on this little road. Like, there's a little bridge. It is tiny.
Yeah,
I don't know.
That bridge is one way. In fact, that temple piece would not, I don't think it would be able to, it would barely clear that if they took it. They're going to turn to the right there and go onto the property right before they get to that. But you can see, all the commotion that it's going to, and there in the left-hand corner, you can see there's 2 of the modules. That's not the whole temple. That's, but you can see, how large those are and how they're, this white structure is going to be standing in the middle of this beautiful Western landscape.
Yeah, even those right there, you can't see the landscape anymore. That's all your eye is drawn to. And that's not even close to how tall the temple is going to be. Just those modules right there. Yep. So the main reason we wanted to go through Cody again is because we've been following it the longest, and we feel that we get a sense of what we like to call the playbook. What happens before the residents even know anything about a temple? And I think they're a good example, don't you, Landon?
Yeah, this is a really good show of what happened. So we're using a few of the names. These names are public officials, and that's why we're using them, because they are the public officials. And it's important. The names are important because it ties the individual as a church leader and also as a city leader. So in July 2017, Matthew Moss was called as an LDS bishop in the Cody 3rd Ward. In April of 2021, Blocks is a company in partnership with Haskell Engineering, had the design and rendering of the Helena Temple and put in the order for the building modules for Helena, Casper, and Cody. At this point, Cody citizens knew nothing of this temple. So they have an open house where they tell you, oh, we want to hear your thoughts and on how the temple should look, or, what ideas do you have? The temple's already been ordered. It's already being manufactured.
2 years prior.
2 years prior. Yeah. So again, a sin of commission. You are deceiving them when you tell them you want to hear their ideas. You really don't. You already have your plan in place.
Yep.
In October of 2021, October 3rd, the Cody Temple is announced at LDS General Conference. So this is months, 6 months after it's already been ordered.
Mhm.
Non-LDS residents know nothing.
Yep.
On January 10th, 2022, Bishop Matthew Moss is reappointed to the Planning and Zoning Board. So, again, this is after the temple is announced, but it's not widely known outside of LDS circles what that even means, or where it's, nobody knows where it's going at this point. But in January of 2022, Matthew Moss, who is an LDS bishop, gets put back on the Planning and Zoning Board. 20 days later, January 30th, Bishop Matt Moss is released, and R. Todd Stoll, Cody City Planner, is called as second counselor in Cody 3rd Ward. So the same ward Bishop Moss is released from.
And by being released, for those that don't know, it means he's no longer the bishop, someone else. Bishops are volunteers over a congregation of a couple hundred people, and it's a volunteer position, lasts for about 5 years. So being released means now you're not doing that anymore, someone else. But to be called means that now you will start serving in a capacity. So R. Todd Stoll, the city planner, is now going to be the second counselor. It's a bishop, a first counselor, and a second counselor who are in charge of an LDS ward.
And when you say volunteer, you don't raise your hand and say, I'll do it. They call you. So, so on January of 2022, Matt Moss, as we said, joined the Planning and Zoning Board.
Oh, I think I doubled that right there. Yeah, sorry.
But between October 2021 and January 2022, the city planner, Todd Stoll, who is now the second counselor in the Cody Third Ward, updated 5 chapters of the 11 in the zoning code title 10. In January, the same time that Bishop Matt Moss is put on the board, he dumped it on the Planning and Zoning Board to review and sent to the City Council for ordinance changes. This was explained as a means of helping create more affordable housing. The city administrator was okay on this too. Planning and Zoning Board had 3 new members during this initial review time. Moss was one of them.
Yeah, and this is from our residents kind of reviewing what was happening. So, but yeah, that's exactly what happened.
Now,
Codes
again,
and things were changed.
We aren't experts on this. We don't know. We're just saying that, does this seem odd that the codes all got changed right when LDS people get put on the board? And that's just a question that's being asked.
Yep, we have no idea.
And it's a legitimate question. Anyone should be able to ask, was there any influence on this? Because remember, the church in April ordered this temple before it's even ordered. And then right at the same time it's announced, the codes start getting changed.
Yep.
It's something that needs to be looked at as to whether or not people with influence are able to go in and start making changes or requesting changes to codes before a town even knows this is happening. And we're simply stating this because we're going to see this play out over and over again in different temple districts, different temple areas. We keep seeing that right before the temple goes in, the city codes all of a sudden change.
Right. And we have no idea what that means. We're just presenting a timeline. We really do not know what it means. And we're trying not to really make any conjecture. We're just presenting a timeline.
Correct. These updating activities continued throughout 2022 and into the early half of 2023, finishing just ahead of the temple project application to the city in May of 2024. In February of 2023, temple modules started showing up on members' property for storage.
Yeah.
March 15th, 2023, the site was announced. So the temple modules are already in town a month before the site is even announced in the Cody enterprise. This is the first time the Cody people have ever even heard about a site for the temple. And it's already built in pieces sitting there waiting to erect. Nothing's been requested yet. No permits been asked for. March 27th is the first time they see a picture of what the temple looks like and realize this thing's really, really tall.
Because I think that's an issue when you hear a religion is going to build a building, and we've seen it called a church before. I think people don't really think twice about it. I think they just think, oh, it's a church building. It'll be a little bigger than normal, but it'll have a steeple. People are used to seeing steeples on churches. It's not a big deal. I don't think most people can understand what it is until they see the schematics, and then they freak out.
And they also had no way of knowing because the land wasn't even donated until March of 2023.
Right.
So they've already got it sitting there for a month, 2 months. The pieces are sitting there before they even, so you can't check land records to find out where is this thing going. But somebody seems, did these other people who sat on church boards have any insider knowledge of where this temple was going, what codes would be needed, what changes would need to be made to have that temple there? These are fair questions that should be asked and should be looked at, to me, as part of the lawsuit. But I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a guy asking the questions here.
And again, I think about somebody that is really politically active and they're always checking zoning codes and going to all planning meetings and things like that. They'd probably be aware that things were being changed, but because they had no knowledge of any of these buildings coming in or the sites, they would never think it had anything to do one with the other. And maybe it doesn't, but a person would not really have a way to check.
And how would you be able to do this? In business, if you start trading on stocks before the rest of the market has a knowledge of it, that's illegal.
Right.
So I don't know, should there be, I don't think there's any laws that say you can't do this, but a question should be asked, should there be laws that say you can't, if you have inside information on a zoning thing, that you can't start requesting changes when nobody knows what it is you're trying to do?
I don't know how that works. I have no idea. All right, what happened next? The land was donated.
May, the temple project application is submitted to the city of Cody, and June 6th is the meeting that went, horribly wrong with the LDS church and the church PR people. coming in and pretending like they wanted to listen to the members. And meanwhile, the pieces are all sitting there now for almost 3 months.
Yeah.
And then June 16th, there was a meeting of the City of Cody Planning and Zoning Board. So this is when all the no, we're not going to approve a temple, you need a special use permit,
Right.
and all of this went back and forth. Meantime, you've got the second counselor in the second counselor in the bishopric, or the organization asking for the questions is the city planner, and a former bishop who is sitting on the council who also did not recuse himself. But the guy who did the geotechnical data, who is not LDS, recused himself because the company he worked for had a contract to do the I think it was the geotechnical work. I
There
could
was
be
an
wrong on that.
individual. There was an individual on the planning and zoning board whose company received a contract to do some work on the temple, and he recused himself because that would be a financial gain, because his company had a little contract. So
but
he recused
evidently
himself.
being a leader for the organization there does not constitute need to remove yourself as an impartial member.
Yeah. And again, I don't know, right? But what's interesting, and as Landon pointed out, and again, watch our former episodes on this, a lot of back and forth, residents filing suits, all kinds of things happening. It's been going on for a year now, but Cody City learned its lesson, didn't it, Landon?
They did. And we're not saying in any way that the city had any way of knowing any of this either. You know,
I was being facetious.
Yeah,
when I
they
said
were.
that. No, Cody's amazing.
Pretty much a victim of this as well, or at least they suffered as a result of it.
Yes.
So just in March, Cody passed a city ordinances tightening conditional use permits that were spurred by the LDS temple controversy, and that was approved by Cody City Council last week. So they tried to tighten up the laws so that people couldn't come in and manipulate anything like this again.
Yeah.
And so this is the changes they made. This could be useful to other cities out there, but the ordinance would require 14 days notice of a public hearing to those owning property within 300 feet of the site. If the owners of 20% of the property object at a public hearing, a 75% supermajority of the city council or 6 of the 7 members would have to vote to approve the CUP. So
Conditional use permit, meaning they're asking for some changes.
That's right. They're saying that it has to be pretty unanimous for the residents to want something before we're going to issue a conditional use permit.
Right.
The task force was directed by Hall to work to create a more responsive and adaptive system that accommodates the evolving needs of our city, according to past reporting. The catalyst for reviewing the conditional use permit process grew from the controversy involving the permit for the Church of Jesus Christ. Oh, the Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints Temple.
Oh, dear.
The Church of Jesus Christ of that city council.
Let me stop you right here.
All over you.
Church.
Let me stop you. On Skyline Drive, issued last year. The project is the subject of several lawsuits by the church and a group called Preserve Our Cody Neighborhoods that advocates for relocating the temple. POCN member Carla Egelhoff said she supported retaining the requirement for any project seeking a CUP to conform to the Cody master plan, especially the desirability of dark skies to eliminate light pollution at night. Terry Skinner, another POC member, said the 300-foot notification area should be larger and the notification by mail should be extended to 21 or 30 days. He also said a CUP applicant should comply with the master plan. So he's saying,
again, I'll interject here. The reason this is because I think we've seen with all the cities, they have to mobilize so quickly. Notification is just instantaneous, right? It gives them just a week or so, or a couple weeks. So here in Cody, they're trying to say, no, we need like a month to figure out what's happening, to get our ducks in a row so that we can address this.
and you need to go out wider because, the distance, and 300 feet is minimal, especially in Wyoming where everybody lives on 5 acres. But the taller a building is, the further away it can be seen and the more people it impacts. Therefore, if you're going to give an exemption, it should range based on how high the exemption is that you're looking for, in one sense, because even 300 feet is not going to make a bunch of changes. But Carson Rowley, a member of the task force and city planning and zoning board, said the requirement for a supermajority of the city council voting on a cup creates a high barrier and should be reduced to 2/3. So he wanted to lower it to 2/3 from 75%, but that it's 75%. All of these changes will indeed make development more difficult, he added. But that's exactly what the residents, I think, are saying, is we don't need huge development in rural Cody. We like it being rural and we want to keep it that way. But Carson, he lives there. He would probably know. City Attorney Scott Kopitke, who's one of the people who was very supportive of the temple process, said requiring a cup applicant to conform to the master plan is contrary to state statutes. To implement the master plan, it would have to be enforced through city ordinances, something the city council hasn't done in the 12 years since the plan was adopted. Thus, he recommended removing the provision from CUP requirements. Well, amazingly, they just changed all the city ordinances during the time. Why can't they do it again? Asked about the reason for the new ordinance, Hall said that the temple controversy was a large contributing factor.
So isn't that interesting? In Heber, the changes that were made at the same time the temple was there to accommodate the temple has now allowed all these other developments to come knocking at the door, they said. And here in Cody, they're trying to shut that door and say, that's not going to happen here. We're going to get some things on the books right away so that doesn't happen. It's very interesting to see the two reactions.
Well, my guess is Heber will try to turn it down as well. Now that the temple's been passed, they'll now try to shut the door. They opened it, let the church drive through, and now they're going to try to shut that door. It'd be my guess.
Yep,
so
that's it. So I think the final word on Cody is the lawsuit
decision sometime the end of May, probably.
21st, I think. Yeah. And that's, I think, the final decision, right? Either it's all sent back to start over again because the residents have won, or they say, go ahead. Because right now the church could start building right now. They could. However, through the legal process, they could have to tear it down if it has to go back and start over, I think, or something like that. So they have not started building yet, but the modules are there and it's all going to happen on the 21st and we'll see what happens. And again, the city of Cody is not fighting the church. They have backed off because of the expense. It's residents using their own funds who have mounted these legal battles in Heber and in Cody.
And again, it's not the Department of Justice who is doing this. It is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that is doing this, the suing. And the citizens group is the one who has to come up with the money through donations and whatever. And that's what's going to happen in McKinney. That's what's going to happen in Lone Mountain. If you want to fight it, you're going to have to come up with the money yourself. And that's exactly what the church is counting on, that they've got unlimited pockets and they will destroy you in court. They do what Jesus would do, sue you,
I've never heard Jesus say that, but All right. Well, and I would say the motivation for this is when I was talking to a family member and kind of detailing a faithful family member, some of these things happening with the different temples. And I was very calmly saying, do you think this is right? Some of these things that you're hearing me talk about. And the family member said, at all cost, they must be built at all cost. And I mean, this is just my anecdotal, my family member, but that's an attitude. That's a point of view at any cost. So now we're going to talk about Lone Mountain, Las Vegas temple. This seems to have something new happen about every day.
Yeah. It's
like
very
I said, we've got
active
like
right
100 slides.
Yep.
This is going to be 4 hours long. I hope not. All right. Tell us about Lone Mountain.
Large temple, 87,000 square feet, about the size of those in Utah. I think Orem temple that just opened, the one down in St. George, I think
Linden.
is similar. Linden. These are big temples. 19
temples.
acres in being built in a rural neighborhood, rural protection area. If you recall from our previous episode, This is the one where the lawsuit, the law firm representing the church has made $70,000 in donations to 7 different city council members. And of course, I was watching, we've been watching Reddit. We've been seeing people on some of the faithful people telling us that there's no proof that that went to help them secure anything with the temple.
And there isn't.
That there isn't. There's
isn't.
common sense, but there's no.
No.
There's no. And we're going to talk a little bit about some access that the city council seems to have that nobody else seems to have to things. And again, part of the playbook, because before the residents even knew that this temple was going in, the city passed, or before they'd ever seen what it looked like, the city passed codes that changed where a church or a religious facility couldn't be built on more than 5 acres. They changed the code to allow for that. And then not only did they change that, but now they're considering changing the zoning from residential to CV so that the church can build on that land. This group does have an interlocal agreement. We've showed on our episodes where the interlocal agreement clearly says that you cannot rezone. Of course, all the lawyers get involved, and one says it means this and one says it means that.
It's all about one comma.
Yeah, one comma. I'm a pretty simple guy. I read it and it says the code cannot be changed. I don't know how lawyers get around that, but
You don't know what is, right? Is doesn't mean is.
Is doesn't mean is. So it's a little bit
exactly. But again, like Landon said, we're just putting out, things, statements, posing questions. We can't make any connection between this and that. We can just say this contribution happened, this zoning law was changed. That's all we can say. We have no idea. It's above our pay grade, right? We'll run into that later. We do not know. We're just kind of putting the pieces of information together to let anybody make of what they will. So this was funny because when I was talking to some of the residents in Lone Mountain, I was like, you know what they did at Cody? They put up a crane with a light on it to show how tall the temple would be. I don't know if the same group that I talked to was responsible for this, but they came up with the same idea. It says Las Vegas balloon ascends in protest of LDS temple. And I don't necessarily know that it was a protest. It was more of a PSA, right? To let people know, because again, I do not think a person who doesn't know anything about the LDS church understands how gargantuan temples are. They just, I think it's just like a regular church building, and we'll show some pictures later. It says residents of Lone Mountain community said they are taking action to demonstrate the height of the proposed religious temple and said they are not full of hot air. Neither is their balloon. The 7-foot white helium balloon assembled by John Dorsey, owner of Mr. Balloon. That sounds like a fun place. Mr. Balloon was purchased by an unnamed Lone Mountain resident to illustrate. Again, this is a PSA, the height of 216 feet, the current maximum height of a proposed Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints temple. So they're just trying to let people know, look, you don't think this affects you? You probably even haven't heard of this off in your neighborhood a mile away. But when we launch this balloon, gosh darn it, you're going to look up in the sky and go, what's that? Right? And then you might start asking some questions. So the residents there sent us some pictures. They were really smart, and they did this on the day that there was some kind of community event or fair. So they were able to put up a booth and have a vehicle with a poster just so that people who saw it and said, what's that? They could get some information. So here's a picture of it being launched. And I know you probably can't see very well, but right in the middle, actually toward the upper part of that red circle, is the balloon. And is that Lone Mountain itself, Landon? I'm not sure.
I'm guessing that's Lone Mountain.
Yeah, one of the beautiful mountains. And I'm trying to, in my mind's eye, superimpose the temple there with this. I mean, the spires to the top of the mountain from that perspective.
And if you want to look, you can see down in the lower, those are houses, those little flat things way down below are the houses
on a
that
hill,
are surrounding it. Mm-hmm. So this thing is going to massively stick out of the the neighborhood.
Yep, and impact the landscape for miles around. You're going to be able to see this. So that's the first thing that happened. The other thing we kind of got wind of is that within the LDS church, they started a petition. And here's a picture in a meeting house. Looks like it has some pictures of the temple, some drawings, some pens, maybe some pieces of paper. This is the email or letter that was sent around. We have a cleaner copy on the next slide, and you can read that, Landon. But they are encouraging the residents to sign this petition showing support for the temple.
Yes. Hello, Sky Canyon Stake members. Between now and May 5th at the Azure and Elkhorn Church buildings, individuals in attendance will have the opportunity to sign a paper petition to support the Lone Mountain Temple. The paper petition is a tangible way for our legal representatives to demonstrate the support of citizens living in neighborhoods close to the temple. Those legal representatives are the law firm that made the donations. We invite all stake members 18 and above to sign this paper petition. It's important to note that the paper petition is separate and even more necessary than any other online or comment card you may have already filled out. Even if you have already filled out an online petition or comment card, we invite everyone to sign the paper petition as well. Participating in all three separate petitions, online petition, paper petition, and comment card, can show public support for the Lone Mountain Temple. It's kind of like the Godhead of petitions.
You have to do all three to make it count.
You have to do all three, and evidently it counts. If you sign all three, it counts 3 times. Any members of the Indian Springs or Beatty branch are welcome and invited to participate and sign the petition, but it will not be held actively by their branch. Each ward has been assigned a ward petition leader. I hope they call me on a petition.
Yeah, as a petition leader. That's an LDS song for those that it's I hope they call me on a mission. So yeah.
Please contact your ward petition leader.
When I am yeah, exactly. Perfect.
Please contact your ward petition leader if you have any questions or need to schedule a time to sign the paper petition. Blank is the stake petition coordinator. That's a name. And
yes, I redact it. I try to redact all the time. Yes. Sometimes I miss it, and I'm sorry, but I do try to redact.
So there you have it. They're inviting again. This is the equivalent of the ice cream party, and it's gonna get worse. This is just the starting to get the petition going.
Wait, go back one. The thing that gets me is where it says each ward has been assigned a ward petition leader. That means somebody actively has been called into the bishop's office and they say, will you please take control of these petitions, make sure these get done? So is this a calling, an official calling? That seems to be at odds with not being involved politically. And I know there are times in the church before, I will point to Prop 8, where they very actively solicited donations. And this was, years ago, the Marriage Between a Man and a Woman Act in California. So I know there's a precedence for this, but it just seems, I don't know. Again, I'll just put the question out there. It seems odd that there would be somebody actually called in the ward to do this. I'm not sure. I don't know.
It does have scriptural preference. It's a calling to make the election sure.
No one is going to get that. But anyway, they're definitely mobilizing, as we talked about before, to make sure that all this information through the law firm gets to the political or the public officials to let them know how many people, so many people, I would guess at this point, thousands of people support this temple.
And you did a show with Nemo, and we brought this up. Is lobbying legal? Can you lose your 501c3 status?
I don't know. I don't know where you draw the line. That's the problem. I don't know.
Here we are. We can read what it says. It says, in general, no organization may qualify for Section 501c3 status if a substantial part of its activities is attempting to influence legislation, commonly known as lobbying. A 501c3 organization may engage in some lobbying, but too much lobbying activity risks loss of tax-exempt status. Well, that's real clear. You can do some. But
what's too much and what's not? I know, because you do have to be able to protect your interests. I understand that. Of course, any religion does. But where is that line? I don't know.
Well, it says what legislation? Legislation includes action by Congress, any state legislator, any local council or similar governing body.
Oh.
So it would seem that if you're trying to influence the action of a local council, that would seem to be problematic to me. Then it goes on and describes several others. Then I want to read that last paragraph there. An organization will be regarded as attempting to influence legislation if it contacts or urges the public to contact members or employees of a legislative body for the purpose of proposing, supporting, or opposing legislation, or if the organization advocates the adoption or rejection of legislation. Which I would think county ordinance would be is considered legislation.
So urging the public to contact someone. Again, these are all gray areas that somebody with a higher pay grade is going to have to look into, but that is very interesting. I don't know. I keep saying I don't know. Usually I know, right? On my podcast. I never say I don't know. In these cases, I don't.
The church has the finest lawyers money can buy, the finest lawyers of tithing can buy, I guess, to make sure that they're legal. But this sure seems fishy, or doesn't seem to.
I don't know. All we can do is put out this information and see what anybody else thinks of it. So that was kind of fascinating. Okay. So another thing that kind of came to light for us was that there possibly was an earlier application and insider knowledge that we didn't know about. So this was kind of fascinating. Do you want to read through this, Landon?
Another interesting fact that isn't being talked about by us, this is
the residents,
local groups, that the church originally submitted their application and then withdrew it. And there was no movement on it until January of this year. Ward 6 council member Alan Polensky took office because Starvos Anthony, who was the Ward 6 council member, took his new position of lieutenant governor. At the time the application was submitted on January 9th, the bill for the zoning change had not been presented yet, and churches were to be built on less than 5 acres. That changed in March. So could the church have known about the bill to change it on parcels of 5 acres or more?
So they submitted an application to build. Is that right?
Yeah, it sounds to me like they submitted the application, and then I don't know if there was a realization that you couldn't build on less than 5 acres and that the law needed to be changed.
Yep.
Then they withdrew it, and then the law changed. That's a supposition that somebody is saying. This is one of the things we found from the groups that are, but they're saying
I think a lot of people weren't aware of the earlier application. I think they thought that, that zoning, the CV was changed. And then I don't think a lot of people were aware of this. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah. And this is actually a copy of the Department of Planning application for the temple in January. And this is very interesting because you'll see in here who's applying. They're applying not for a temple, but for a church.
Oh, it says church. It's so small I can't read it. It really says church?
Yeah, it says church.
What does it ask that is answered by church?
It says proposed use.
Proposed use, church. Okay.
Yeah. Now, I don't know that I would consider a temple a church. The LDS do not consider it a church.
No.
Maybe that's a legal term they have to use, but they're clearly indicating, something different, because a Jewish synagogue would put synagogue, so why couldn't they put temple? You can see here it was the ward was through, I think this must be that Anthony Scavol, they said. But this is the thing that really interests me is, look, here's the applicant, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Look who the representative is. Camphor Crowell.
That's the law firm.
That's the law firm. That's the law firm that represents the church that was at all the meetings. Look at this part of the planning application. To the best of your knowledge, does the mayor or any member of the city council or planning commission have any financial interest in this or any other property with the property owner, applicant, the property owner, or the applicant's general or limited partners, or an officer of their corporate or limited liability company? And they check no. Yet we have records of Camphor Crowell making donations to 7 different council members in 2022 and 2021, 2022, and 2023, I think is when they were. So again, this seems like another very gray area. Is a political donation to the mayor or the city council a financial interest in the property?
That could be a wiggle, I can't even say it, wiggle word. And at the time they made the donation, were they a representative for the church? We don't know that either. So again, all we can go off is what this says and how it was signed. And they're saying, no, there was no conflict.
That's what they're
That's
saying.
all we can say. Yep. Interesting.
So, then we run into just recently on May 7th, so just a couple days ago, Frances Allen Polensky, who is the councilwoman who initiated the changes in the zoning laws and who's supporting this, who and we wanted to emphasize did receive a political donation from the church's representatives, and I think it was 2022.
That we in no way know is related at all to any of this. Those are just statements.
Right. She holds an open house. There was going to be an open house to talk about the church and this proposed temple. Well, comes to find out that this comes right out of LDS playbook on how to avoid answering any tough questions. They turned it into a virtual forum.
Right.
It was online. It was limited to 1,000 people who could attend. And you know, if I wanted to avoid answering questions about whether I'd received a donation, the easy way is to say, send me all your questions. We'll go through them and we'll pick out the relevant ones and we will answer those the questions that we feel are relevant. And that seems to be what happened in this meeting. Was there were no tough questions asked. People sent in questions, but those questions weren't answered. Did you have anything you wanted to say about this?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I did try to access it through this and I couldn't. Tried the barcode and everything. And then I learned that it was streamed on her Facebook page. So there was access to everyone. Although, as I understand, the comments were turned off. So it was more just kind of like a listen and learn sort of a scenario as they read the questions that they had curated. And I guess there's no way to know if they answered every question that came in, but I think our residents indicated that they had submitted some questions that they didn't hear had been answered. So yeah, it was just kind of a listen and learn as they went through some of the questions to get more information. And this is not the main planning and zoning board meeting. That's going to happen in a week. This was kind of a preliminary, let's just get some information out there. So they're definitely on her Facebook page, open public, her public Facebook page. There were quite a few comments that were made. There were quite a few comments in support of the temple. There were a lot. The comments all started out, I've lived in Vegas, for this much time. It definitely, they promoted how long they'd been there. So they're stakeholders. Sometimes you're told if you're involved in this, you're not a stakeholder. I don't know. I think everybody who cares is a stakeholder. So there were a lot of people showing their support, their absolute joy and excitement over the temple. There were also some people that were expressing more concern. So it was a mix of people on the Facebook page. And again, they couldn't weigh in during the meeting, so they were just weighing in on Facebook. So let's see, somebody said, so they couldn't even comment on Facebook. I think that means during the meeting, because after the meeting, I saw these. Nope. As soon as the meeting started, we were lectured like little school children. All microphones were muted and we were not allowed to ask live questions. Comments were blocked. Only interactions which weren't disabled were the emoji faces, which they forgot to block. I'm picturing just a bunch of hearts and a bunch of mad faces. I bet there was nothing in between. It was just hearts going up for the people that love it and mad faces for people that have concerns. So
Yeah, there's several, and you can read through these. Several
Why don't you
comments.
read the one that says it was like the Mormon law firm? I thought that was a good one.
Yeah, it was like the Mormon law firm wrote this presentation, and this guy was just reading off the slides. He actually didn't answer any questions, nothing related to the campaign contributions. Pretending like the zoning ordinance change that transformed this district into civic just organically happened. If they blocked all the questions, at least have a neutral third-party interviewer call out the most obvious bullshit. Like we all said the fix is in, and then they go on to say
some stuff. And I guess we should say the person that was answering the questions, and kind of sounds like they make it sound like he read a script or something. It was somebody from the Planning and Zoning Board, right? Or somebody from the planning.
Yeah, it was a city
Commission.
official that was making the presentation for that. An interesting one down here that I found interesting was someone said, so a housing development was denied in 2019, but this is okay. Yeah.
Interesting. So looking back to the past to see things that were, did not pass, and then seeing that this did. Yep. Those are the comparisons that you can make. That's interesting. So anyway, I think that meeting left people feeling kind of, I'm not sure if I was heard. I feel like maybe it was scripted. They just weren't sure exactly what was happening. So then just today, there was a news story, tension over possible construction of the temple. And we took a little clip from this. This happened just this morning.
The guy who represents the church says, oh, that's above my pay grade. I want to talk to the person that's within that pay grade and answer our questions.
Well, so first let's clarify, I don't have a pay grade. Everything I do is completely voluntary in the church.
Lone Mountain Stake President Bud Stoddard says the church is trying to stay within all city requirements, despite the designs coming from the church's headquarters.
The proposals that have to do with the design of temples are made by the church's architects in Salt Lake City, as well as the Special Projects Department. All aspects of the design are made by the prophet of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
So that statement there, let's go to the next slide. Every time I hear an interesting statement, I just have to make AI. I just can't help it. So I have a couple of comments on this clip, but this is what stood out to everybody in the in the post-Mormon, post-LDS community, because all aspects of the design are made by the prophet of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Now, I feel that the state president probably misspoke, and he probably meant to say they're approved. Don't you think that's probably what it was?
It has to be, because I cannot imagine a 100-year-old man looking at the design, all the design details for 300 temples.
Yeah, the designs are made, meaning that he's the one. Now, he already is a former heart surgeon, a renowned heart surgeon back in the day. So I just picture him, surgery on one hand, designing buildings on the other. He really is a Renaissance man. But I don't know if it was just a slip of the tongue, or if it is a way to remind members of the church that, the prophet, he's very much behind the temple. These are ordained. These are going where the Lord wants them to go. Is it a situation like that where you have to kind of connect the prophet and the temple together again? So, but no, we do not believe that he meant to say it. I think it was a slip of the tongue, but it sure made us all laugh to think about that. So I think another comment that I would have on that, let's go back one. I think another comment that I would have on that slide or that video, well, number one, they were filming in a chapel. Now, when I was growing up, you could not film in a chapel. Was it that way for you, Landon?
Oh yeah, you couldn't. Yeah. And up until COVID, I'd never saw, that was the first time you actually saw a camera allowed in a
No, I couldn't film my baby blessing, my son's mission farewell. You were not allowed to film anything. So I think that's interesting that they're in there. And I think we should explain that pay grade thing. When one of the first articles came out about the temple and they were asking some questions there in Lone Mountain, the stake president, and I think it was him or another one, said, that's not in my pay grade, meaning I don't make those decisions. They're made up here. And he's correct. So that is where that came from. But I really have empathy for the woman who said, well, if you're the one that can't answer the questions, who can answer our questions? You know, she doesn't understand the hierarchy in the church. And we've had some of the residents say, well, can you get me the mailing address? I want to write to the prophet. People don't understand that's not the way it works. Even in the church, if you were to write a letter to the prophet, to the church headquarters, it would be sent back down to your stake president and your bishop so you could deal with it there. It's really an
That's
ivory
the funny
tower.
thing. It would be sent right back to the guy who it's above his pay grade.
Yeah, exactly. That's what's funny. So there's local leadership like that. They deal with the people. And then there's the decision makers up top. And, you know, to those of you asking whose pay grade is it, you will not be able to contact those people or even get any information. It's going to come trickling down through the stake president, through the messenger, through the law firm. You're not going to be able to access these people at the upper levels, which makes it really interesting.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't have the church's lawyer at this meeting telling them that the Department of Justice was going to sue them if they didn't allow this this temple in. I think there may be a backdoor story going on here. Like, hey, City of Las Vegas, you're in a lawsuit for millions of dollars right now with another developer, and the last thing you want is a lawsuit with us. And you can see that in Heber, when the citizens group sued us, or sued the decision of the city council, we stepped in and we're going to pay the cost to fight that one. And we're going to do the same thing here. So do you want to fight your own citizens that have very little money and we'll go in and pay the bill? Or do you want to fight us who have endless, and we'll make that other project look like Disneyland when we're done with you?
No, that's an interesting observation because it certainly makes it more attractive for the city council or the zoning board to align themselves more with the church and to say, you know, look how much support there is, because visibly, and we're going to go into that in a minute, it does look like there's tons of support. It's in their best interest. Absolutely. They don't want to face another lawsuit like Heber. They would like, perhaps if the residents do sue, to have the backing of the billion-dollar corporation church. So yeah, it's really interesting. I did want to say I reached out to somebody that used to be involved in designing temples for the church. And I kind of asked this person about, you know, what do you think about this quote? And they said, no. The process is the architects design it. And that's kind of what the stake president was alluding to. And then there's a special projects committee, and they come in and they look at it and kind of oversee it. And then it eventually gets the final approval from the prophet. The interesting thing, a little side note that this person who used to work in designing temples said, is that when the head of the special projects would change, like general authorities and apostles are kind of, they come and they go, they're called, they're sent somewhere else, they're assigned. When a new person would come in this person's experience of designing temples, they would say, scrap that. No, we're starting over, you know, so it was very much, you know, what kind of personality driven is the sense that I got. I thought that was kind of interesting, but definitely approval from the top, but not completely designed. So that was an interesting side note. Okay. Then we got some really interesting information about somebody who is a stake or some kind of liaison with the city council through the stake president. And this person had been detailing stories of interactions and things they had done with and again, is it the city council? Is it the planning and zoning board? It's hard for me to tell who they're talking about exactly. Should I just say public official?
Yeah.
Do you think that's better just to say public official? Yeah. So this person who is a member of the church and is a liaison had been telling of these experiences, telling it several places as I understand it. So this person talked about going on a field trip to the St. George area where there is a temple, the Red Cliffs Temple, that was completed, and it was having the open house. I think a lot of you guys have heard about this open house that they do in a temple before it's dedicated. So it's a couple weeks before it's going to be dedicated. Anybody can go in. It's a tour. Landon and I went through the Red Cliffs Temple, didn't we? And just recently the Layton Temple. Yeah. And so you can take a tour. You can see what the temple is all about. So according to some people who heard this liaison telling this story, a group, they thought it was perhaps the stake president, some kind of public official, and perhaps somebody from the law firm went, I think, on a day trip down to Red Cliffs and went through the temple. And the person relating this story said that some of the people that were there that were not LDS were really interested, like pretty interested. It might be encouraging, but definitely got to see what the temple was all about. And so then that story was confirmed in that virtual meeting. Why don't you read that, Landon?
Yeah, this is from Instagram post or Facebook. Like
Right.
Francis Allen Polensky mentioned during the meeting, she, along with some city employees, went on a field trip to St. George to learn about temples. I've made a public records request to see if public funds were used for such a trip. I have a Dropbox link. I don't think we need to read that. So
No. So I hadn't thought about that, but I think it was just a day trip, but I don't know. I don't know the ins and outs of that. Somebody from the church taking public officials down to see what a temple is going to look like, what it might look like in their area if it's passed.
Well, if I guess I'd be less concerned if it was public funds, if they took a bus and drove there using public funds to do this, would make more sense to me than the church paying their expenses to do it. I do contracting with government entities, and we're not allowed to even give them a ride when it's on a project we're working with, because that can appear as favoritism or that. So they're not even allowed to take a ride with us. So if the church is arranging their transportation, paying for it, giving them lunch, putting them up in a hotel room, any of that stuff, that to me would be problematic, because that's a public, that's a public gift.
And I think, as I understand it, it was a day trip. It was like a day trip. And I don't know, they probably maybe all drove themselves. I don't know. It looks like maybe some people are going to look into that, but definitely took a tour to see what the temple's all about. Because again, I think a normal person who's not LDS doesn't understand. So this is a way to go inside and see what happens there and see inside the building. So the field trip to St. George. Okay. So the other thing that we heard,
the other issue that I have with this is, if in fact the church's law firm was going along with them, and the church's law firm representative has made contributions, that certainly looks like special access is being provided to one group over the other. They didn't seem to invite the neighbor group to go. Why not take the head of the rural neighborhood association and say, why don't you come and ride along with the officials, and we'll take you and show you so that you can see what's coming in. I have a feeling they did not want the neighbors to see how big this thing is.
Yeah. You honestly can't tell till you get right next to it. You really can't. So, and again, we're not exactly clear who went on this field trip. It looks like for sure Alan Polensky did, and then
some city employees. And
some city
they
employees.
Say she mentioned that she went on this during the meeting. So
right. So we know that for sure. But as far as the other people that were listening to the story from the liaison in the stake, they said that they thought she mentioned the lawyer, but I certainly can't confirm that at all. And my hope is that the city employees will go to where the residents live, to the location where the temple is going to be built. Maybe they'll sit on their lawn and, have a soda and a lawn chair and look at the view. I hope they will try to understand, what it's also like from that perspective, because that's how you make a balanced decision.
Well, my understanding is that possibly one of the city council members did and tried to convince the homeowners that this was no larger than the apartment buildings that were nearby.
Oh, I think we have a slide on that coming up.
Yep.
All right. So the other thing we learned from our friends who were listening to the liaison from the stake is that they had gone one day to the Las Vegas temple that's already there. No, it's not at all as big as the proposed Lone Mountain Temple. It's an older temple, and they were there to do a traffic study. And again, I believe these were people from the city. Sounded like the same group maybe that went to St. George. Again, we didn't really have names, but they went and they sort of looked at traffic and said, this doesn't seem bad. Somebody said, doesn't seem like it was very bad at all. And I also know they have, at least have been told, they have counters set up to try to, count the cars and see the traffic. Now, there are certain days, the temple's not open on Monday and it's not open on Sunday. And so there are days where you could count traffic and there wouldn't be any. And I think it varies from temple to temple. It's kind of hard to get an accurate study, I think.
Yeah, and it's going to differ in the spring and summer when weddings are happening versus the winter time when not so much of that happens.
I think so too. But to me, there's an indicator, and Landon came up with this about the traffic. I don't know why I didn't catch this, but the temple is slated to have. Tell us about it, Landon.
Yeah, 514 parking stalls. So somebody's figuring that a lot of cars are going to be there at some point.
At some point.
So it appears the church must have done a traffic study to determine how many parking stalls they thought they needed. You don't pave big parking lots if you don't need them. So there must be some justification for why they think they need 514 parking stalls. And since we know temple work is done throughout the day, it's multiple people. Let's say 3 times that, you'd be talking 1,500 cars a day that would be coming through there.
Yeah. And what you're trying to say is that it rotates. People work there. There's probably over 100 people that will work there during the day. And they'll come in and out. They'll take a shift. Like if you work in the temple, my shift, it's 4 hours. I'm going to go at this time. Then you go home. Then another person comes to take a shift. So you have that rotating traffic of people that work in the temple to facilitate the things that happen there for others. Then you have people that come to the temple to go through it just on their own as a person, not somebody that works there. So then you have those people driving in. And then even at night, you have people that come in to clean the temple. Not every night, but you have crews and shifts taken from the local wards and stakes where people come in and do volunteer cleaning. So it is kind of interesting. I live next to a temple and the parking lot is packed throughout the day, all day long, and people are driving, back and forth. So it's definitely a hub of activity. I think it's kind of ironic when they try to say it's not, because, they want to allude to so many people coming to the temple, and that's why they need a new one, right? But then for the traffic, they need to say not many people were coming. So it's kind of confusing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So another thing that we learned from the stake liaison as she was sharing these stories with people is that I believe the stake president is a temple worker or somebody that works in the temple or has something to do with that. And he took this group into the temple. Now, for a regular person, when you go into the temple, there's a lobby, and this is after it's dedicated. And so only people who have a temple recommend can enter from a certain point, meaning you've answered those questions for your bishop. So there's a desk and they scan your temple recommend, and then you're able to go past into the rest of the temple. So nobody can go past that desk unless you have a temple recommend. I no longer have a temple recommend. I would be stopped at the desk. I would not be allowed to go in. Landon, do you have a temple recommend?
I might have an old one somewhere.
I think it's expired. It's a barcode.
Long
they
expired
scan
at
you.
this point. Yeah.
There's probably like an alarm that would go off if you tried to go in. Anyway, the point is, a person can't just go in. You could go in up to that desk, but then you could not go any farther without this recommend. Well, we heard from the people that were listening to this liaison tell her story, how exciting and wonderful it was that the stake president was able to take this group that was touring past the recommend desk and down into a hallway, I think, to look at some computers, I think is what we heard. Just, see how it's automated, see how it's working. And we as members were shocked because nobody can get in. Like that's some kind of special access, it seems like.
Yeah,
so
people
if
can't
this
get
is
in to see their kids married, but
no, you can't go in to see your kids married if you don't have a recommend. You can't go in at all. So this to me was, and it seemed like the liaison from the stake that was telling the story was saying this was very exciting. They were able to go in. So I'm not quite sure how that worked. I don't know. Maybe somebody knows more than I do.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that either. So maybe someone knows more than I do about
but
that.
Again, you're seeing special privilege, and the church is full of special privileges. For all mankind being equal, the church is full of VIPs and special privilege. That's for sure. Yeah.
That might be the case. Yep. So anyway, interesting stories. But again, at least the one about the St. George Temple, that seemed to be confirmed because they talked about it themselves. So that was kind of interesting. All right. So the residents in Lone Mountain kind of started a letter writing campaign. Every time they hear something they don't understand, they just write a letter. And it always starts out with, "It has come to our attention." And somehow we seem to end up with these letters, don't we, Landon?
Yep, we do. You want me to read that?
Yeah, I'll read that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think your mic is getting a little quiet. Why don't you? Yeah, there you go. I think we're fading. As we're podcasting, we're like fading into the background. That's right. We got to keep up the energy. We're almost done. So, okay. It has come to our attention that at least one city council member is stating in meetings, and this is what Landon was talking about, that Touchstone Living's panorama townhomes located at Alexander and Hualapai and about 1 mile away from the LDS parcel is comparable in height to the proposed LDS temple. That is 100% inaccurate. The townhomes are 35 feet tall, the height maximum per local zoning. And that can be verified through building plans through the city of Las Vegas. The proposed LDS temple is 68 feet tall, a 216 feet tall to the top of the steeple. So like you said, Landon, it sounds like somebody is visiting the residents and saying that it's a very similar height to a 35-foot tall townhome.
Yeah, it's almost as if the people on the city council are trying to get this passed through and trying to convince the residents that it's okay. But the residents are not idiots. They went and looked up. They went to the building planned office and looked up the height on them, and they're 35 feet. And the temple's going to be 68 feet to the roof plus the 216-foot temple. So I think you did a little research or recon to help demonstrate this.
I know that people can't fathom how big these temples are. Everyone in Vegas, I might suggest that you take your own field trip to St. George. It's not too far away, and see, just kind of see for yourself that this is the Orem Temple. This is kind of in my area, and it's a similar size and height of the Lone Mountain Temple. And you can see over on the right, those are some condos, townhomes, 3-story. I mean, there's a great...
They're about 35 feet tall, and those are, and the temple is closer to us than the townhomes. So, but you can see they're pretty, you can draw a line straight across there. This isn't even close.
No, it isn't.
This is complete deceit if somebody is trying to convince you that those are going to be the same, same height as these.
Yeah, and I understand there were some graphics. Somebody was talking about it at the virtual meeting, that sort of maneuvering or some angles where it made it look like townhomes were massive, but 35 feet and 216 feet, you just have to do the math.
Yeah, and I think you did another one.
I did. So here's a temple that's similar. It's 87,000. This is in Linden, and it's in the final stages of construction. It is in a neighborhood, and this is me standing outside of my car taking this picture. So there's the temple, and there on the left, on a hill even, is a fairly large home. You can see it's 3 stories. I think it looks like it has an above ground basement. It's a pretty good size home. It's 3 stories in an affluent area neighborhood. And you can see the difference. I mean, look, I couldn't even take the whole spire. I was trying to take the picture. I was leaning back on my hood of my car. You can see the difference there of that very large size home and then the top of the steeple. And I don't know if they can see your cursor, Landon, but if you look on that scaffolding, you can see some tiny little workers. You cannot even imagine how small they are in comparison to the temple and to that house. So again, I'm just trying to help people see the perspective of the size. You're pretty awestruck when you drive up to it. You almost can't comprehend it.
Yep. And we have some additional statements from some of the people in Lone Mountain who are calling the city. This one is an explanation they gave. They said, yes, the senior planner gave me a very thorough explanation about the changes to the CV code as it relates to schools, which made a lot of sense, especially since it appears they were needing to build just a few feet higher than the previous CV code allowed. The part of the CV code change I was really interested in was the change that now allows churches and houses of worship to be on parcels larger than 5 acres. When I asked the senior planner about this, he was unaware that had been added that had been added to Bill 2024-8. And so I wanted to know exactly who added that to Bill 2024-8 and what the reasoning was for adding it. Do you know the history of this change?
So that's fascinating. So the senior planner, if you can go back one, the
Nope.
senior planner, was aware that this change had been made because of schools and needing to build them a little higher than normal, but was not aware that they had changed the parcel size. That's really interesting, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely. It just goes to show that even the people who are the experts on it didn't seem to know all the nuances of this.
Exactly. And so I think these are legitimate questions. Again, we don't know why or how or what it means, but they are definitely legitimate questions that people that live in an area could ask of their public officials about changes that were made. So they're going to keep writing letters, I think, just to try to find out what's going on. So the next thing that happened is rallying the troops. This is sort of like our ice cream story. We've almost come full circle, haven't we? A little bit.
Yeah.
And we'll see in a minute why I made this AI of blue shirts. I think my favorite part of podcasting is AI. I think I'm just going to forget the story. I'm just going to make art. This is great. So but yeah, this came on our radar, and I think a lot of people's radar, and it was very interesting. This video suddenly appeared because remember, there was a meeting on the 14th with the Planning and Zoning Board to hear everybody's opinion on this. So this video popped up.
I'm Annalise Castor, and I'm excited to invite you to come and stand for the temple.
Approvals needed for the Lone Mountain Temple proposed by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints will be considered at the Las Vegas City Planning Commission meeting at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, May 14th at the Las Vegas City Hall. Planning Commission members expect to hear both concerns and support for the temple. Let's pack the plaza at City Hall with supporters of the Lone Mountain Temple. Be on the plaza by 6 p.m. and to wear navy blue to show your support. Please avoid logos if possible. Be sure to allow extra time for traffic and to find parking so you can be there when it matters. So, come stand for the temple. While we're there, let's be peacemakers on the plaza.
See, that's so interesting to me. When you say let's be peacemakers, it alludes to that there might be a problem. And who's the problem?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this goes back to our lobbying. I thought you weren't allowed to encourage people to go, and yet here you're telling them what to do.
Yeah, and so if we go to the next slide, it's more of a
I'm Annalise Castor, and I'm excited to invite you to come and stand for the temple.
Let's watch it again.
Approvals.
I know.
No, but again, my peacemaker comment, it's kind of like
Annalise
when they say be a peacemaker, that alludes that there's going to be a problem there. And it's not them. They're not going to cause the problem. It's our residents. And I absolutely know that's not true. They are very respectful of the process and they just want answers. So here it is, time to stand for the temple. They explain to you how to do parking, how to wear the shirt. They tell you to stand together in a group. And then what is that last little column there, Landon?
Yeah, if you look right here where the video camera is, it says, please be in place for a videographer that will be capturing video of the crowd size from 6 to 7 p.m. So,
yep. So, and they say they're going to show it in city council to show, the vast amount of support. And of course, it will look like a lot of support. And the residents will show up and they have questions and concerns too. So I hope it can go well. I hope everybody gets a voice, because I know in Heber, there was one of the meetings where the residents, the LDS population packed the hall so full that our residents had to watch it from a closed circuit TV in the basement. Like they couldn't even get into the main hall. So I hope that everyone's going to have a fair chance to participate in this process.
yeah, I think that the people who are against the temple zoning changes should also wear blue to the plaza. And let's pack the plaza with blue for those who don't support the temple.
Oh, it's very confusing. I don't know what they should wear. I'm just not sure. So, but again, this would have gone out to thousands of people. I'm trying to explain to the residents there that there's a mechanism within the LDS church to get information out very quickly with the touch of a button, an email chain. It's very highly organized, and you can get, I mean, they're great at organization. It's actually very handy and helpful. And in this case, they're getting this word out. So I guarantee there's going to be quite a number of people there in blue shirts. So it should be very interesting. Let's go to, I think we're almost.
The church has commanded it. They will be there.
That's right. And so one of our residents in Lone Mountain kind of commissioned this, right? It's a David and Goliath. Hopefully it can be taken in the spirit. It's kind of a political cartoon. So it has Goliath as the LDS church being shielded by the city of Las Vegas. And then Camphor Crowell is involved there too. And the rural preservation neighborhood is David. So David and Goliath. And actually this metaphor has been adopted by Cody. People just feel, you know, when they're fighting this organization with billions of dollars, with team after team of lawyers, you know, it's really difficult. And they do start feeling like they're David and Goliath.
Yeah, this is a great cartoon. So
yeah, it's pretty good. So, all right. So let's see. I think, are we done with Lone Mountain? Oh my goodness, there was so much to cover. And again, that meeting is coming up on the 14th. So we'll update you after that happens. The last temple on our list is the Bakersfield, California LDS temple. And this will be very short, everybody. I know this has gone on for a long time. Tell us a little bit about that one, Landon.
30,000 square feet. So not a large, you know, kind of a medium-sized temple. It's in the planning stages right now on 13 acres. But again, very similar. They put it in a neighborhood with a tall tower. And so it made the newspaper there in Bakersfield. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is looking to get approval for a taller temple at its upcoming site in Southwest Bakersfield. The church announced last year that its temple will be built on a 13-acre site located on the intersection of Stockdale Highway and Jewetta Avenue in Southwest Bakersfield. Church leaders released a rendering of the future Bakersfield temple last month. Recently, architects representing the church submitted a request for a zoning modification for its project. The church is requesting a building height of 124 feet, where 60 is the maximum allowed. The issue was sent back to staff so the applicant and the city can address concerns, and will be back for discussion at the Planning Commission in March.
So they are in the process back and forth of talking and all that kind of stuff. And there is a residents group there that is definitely trying to mobilize. I think we have one of our last slides here on that. And they have put out some flyers. I think there's like a homeowners association. It's kind of a little organized neighborhood there. And they're definitely taking donations and trying to figure out what's going on. They have put out some renderings on the right-hand side of exactly what that tower will look like compared to the homes that are there right now. I thought they did a good job there, because that really does show it, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. It's this shows you what these neighbors are complaining about. This is our neighborhood. This does not fit in.
Yeah, and I just noticed that it's not just a house. The one on the bottom is a children's hospital. So here you have a children's hospital, which is a couple stories high, and you've got that towering above it. And then it has the different, I think, angles from the neighborhood. So we've had a little text exchange with these neighbors, and, you know, hope to maybe hear more about what they're doing so that we can do another update. But right now, I think they're mobilizing, and they're putting out some drawings of, you know, what this might look like, and trying to look at all their options.
Yeah. Again, you've got small neighborhood groups, you know, neighborhood groups are being impacted, who have to throw together, somehow come up with money, get everything started. You can see they got a GoFundMe account. They're trying everything to fight against this multi-billion-dollar corporation that already knows what's going in. They have all their people in place. They have people who have callings to get the signatures and all of this. And
and there is an LDS person. They're like Cody. There's an LDS person in Bakersfield involved in the city government. You know, not that makes a difference, or does. I'm not sure, but there is someone there, someone on the planning, I think.
So the key to all of this is what the church keeps going back to is this RLUIPA Act. We're going to be doing an episode on this, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. But you know, they keep saying that this requires that all these neighborhoods just bend over and take whatever the church wants to give them. And that's simply not the case. It does require that you have to show that this is a vital part of your worship, is that you to break the city code, that has to be done in order for you to practice your faith. And that's why we're getting the heights of the steeple thing being an issue, is they're just going to say it so that they can make this through. Again, we learned that this was a federal act that was put in place by it was sponsored by 3 LDS senators. Orrin Hatch was the one who put it in. After Massachusetts Temple, they couldn't get a steeple on that, and then they finally got it through a law that was only in Massachusetts. And so he thought, what a great idea. I don't think he thought of this himself, but he thought, oh, let's put this through so we don't have this issue anymore and take care of the church. And they passed this law got passed, and now this is what we have as a result.
Yep, absolutely. And we are going to talk more about this on our episode, so stay tuned for that, probably in the next week or so. I think we have one final slide. Oh, go ahead.
The sad part about this whole law is, you know, I think everyone as an American would say, of course you should be able to build a place of worship in where you need to in order to have your religious, you know, your religious beliefs or to live them. The problem is that law, you know, was passed as a shield, you know, to protect the churches against any city that might want to keep a certain religion or certain belief system out of their neighborhood. But this is now being used as a sword and wielded against every community in the United States. They're using this law to come in and say, you will take this temple and you will take it at whatever height we decide. And we will have a revelation that says that we can put this architectural element on, and then you can't do anything about it. And this is what is upsetting so many people. It's, you're coming into our community, come in as a neighbor. Come in and show us what you want to do. Come in and abide and put it in the areas, not in the residential neighborhoods, but in the civic areas that are zoned for this type of stuff, and welcome. But when you come in and take over people's neighborhoods where they work their entire life to pay a mortgage to own that one little piece of property that they have, and you come in and say, no, you must look upon us and bow at our will, people aren't going to take that. And that's why you're seeing this. And the church won't take this as their pride, their arrogance. It's just, it's sickening to see. And that's why, you know, I get a little upset about this, because this was the church I went out and represented, and I was told we represented Christ, and this is anything but Christ. And then I, like the person in the letter very early in the show, when you find out that the church is not being transparent, is not being fully honest, that really tears your guts out, because these are the people you were taught to trust throughout your life. So I think we get a lot of gruff from active members, but maybe they should take a look at that and take a look inside and just say, hey, is this really happening? Is this? And we see when a member did, that's exactly what they saw.
Yep, that's exactly right. That's all we're saying is take a look, explore the possibility that maybe things are not as they seem. And as Landon said, there are many temples built in areas where they are welcome. There are no problems. They don't have to change any codes. And in that case, they are a great missionary tool. And maybe they do bless the community as far as just being a good neighbor. And I think the church could use all the positive PR it can get. I know from the fight in Cody and the fight in Heber, I don't know that those communities will ever recover. I know that they are divided, that people see their neighbors in a whole different way on both sides. And what was, I think it might have been you, Landon, that brought up this idea. There's this concept that if you have to struggle for something, it binds you to it even more. Could it be that the church knows this causes problems? The church knows that it puts their members in a very difficult spot of having to be at odds with their neighbor, of having to wear blue shirts, of having to show up. Can it be that it's on purpose to sort of make them feel a persecution complex and bind them closer to the church? It just seems like you can't be so tone deaf that you don't see what's happening to put your members in this scenario. Like the woman in the letter said, I'm being asked to invent something that steeple height is important. That's not true. I'm being asked to say it. And then there's the other perspective that my relative shared, at any cost. It doesn't matter, at any cost. But I would think some people looking inside might not be okay with that. So I don't know. It's a very charged issue, and we're just trying to bring information so that anybody can look at it and study it out in their own mind, right? Let's use the scripture, study it out in their own mind and decide.
Yeah, well, using a scripture, choose ye this day whom you will serve. And they're saying, are you standing with us as the church, or they're making you make a choice?
Yes.
And you can, you're going to have to make a choice against your friends to show that you chose us. And then you're committed to us. It's very much a way that you can commit people. But the key point we wanted to make in this episode was that as we look at these different scenarios, we're seeing the same playbook over and over. We're seeing that they pick high-end residential areas. They go in and they make all the necessary arrangements before any of the residents even know. They either use members in the councils, or they use, or they find ways to get the local government leaders, whether that's
some kind of
political
influence
donations somehow. Or using different powers of influence to get the zoning codes changed, while people don't even know what is happening in their neighborhood. And as I studied through this, I went, oh my gosh, they're building a temple in my town right now that's almost, it's probably within about 6 months of being completed. And I said, my gosh, about 3 years ago, we had a big to-do about allowing high-density housing into our city and whether we were going to change the codes to allow that. And then all of a sudden, there's a temple here now. I'm going, I wonder if that played out in my town, and I had no idea about it. Yeah. So that's why we're bringing this to people's attentions, because this, and you can say this is all legal, but this is not how you be a good neighbor. And God did not, and Jesus did not say, choose between your temple and your neighbor. He said, love thy neighbor. And, that's up to everyone to choose what that means, I guess.
No, that is. And the commandment, love God and love one another, as RFM loves to point out, you adhere to the first commandment by your actions on the second commandment. You love God by how you treat your neighbor and how you interact with the people around you. That's how you do it. That's how a Christ-like person does it. So, and again, we would put a call out to any bigger media source than we are, which there are many. Just look at this big picture, and RLUIPA, as kind of the backbone of all of it. It is a really interesting scenario. And I would hope that somebody someday would do some kind of a story on it, just to kind of shine a little bit of more light. So, but I think we did our best today, didn't we, Landon? We gave it a college try.
We did. We don't have the ability to go in and get all the documents from anyone or do any of that stuff. So all we can do is ask the questions and say, hey, do people have information? Share it, pass it on. That's how things are going to get done in this case, because we don't have that power to do that. We don't have that same authority or the same money and influence that these large organizations have. So if you want to make a change, you got to do it simple. You got to ask the questions and you got to find out the details.
Yep. That's it. You said it. So, all right, everybody. I think we've come to the end. I don't even know how long this was. I can't even talk anymore. But please comment. Let us know what you think. Have you been following any of these temples? Are you in the area of any of these temples? And just comment on what your thoughts are about everything that we presented. It's an absolute fascinating, ongoing story with a lot of twists and turns and a lot of real people's lives involved. That's what we need to remember. These are real people on both sides, the LDS members and the residents. And we want everybody to just get along and have things work out well for everyone so that everybody can have what they need and be happy. So please comment on your thoughts on this episode. Please like and subscribe to Mormonish Podcast. And if you'd like to be made aware of when new episodes come out, you can hit the notification bell. There are also links in our show notes to financially donate and help Mormonish Podcast. We absolutely just think you're wonderful. Those of you that do, there are links to Venmo and PayPal and also mormonishpodcast.org. We also have a link to our merch. Oh my goodness. I've got a mug right here. I think Landon does too. I actually need a big drink of water right now. Yeah. Landon's downed his mug during the whole course of this. That's right. I don't know what's in that mug, Landon. I don't even want to guess. It's got to be something. So, but anyway, links to our merch store if you'd like to get some Mormonish merch. And thank you, Landon. And thank you just to all of our residents I keep calling them our residents. By that, I mean our people that we have gotten to know and to care about, just these wonderful, ethical, moral people that are just trying to do what's best for their neighborhoods and their towns. And we appreciate all of you so much. So we'll say goodnight one more time from Mormonish. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Mormonish. We really appreciate our listeners and would love to hear from you if you have a story you'd like to share. You can email us at mormonishpodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and on our website, mormonishpodcast.org. And don't forget to look for us on YouTube and like and subscribe. Keep joyful, everybody.